Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Thursday, October 12th, 2023. It is 9:06 a.m. The session is set to go until 11:30 a.m. Then we will break and we will pick up again at 1:30 p.m. and go to 4:15. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue, Southeast, room 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. In the boardroom, we have Vice Chair Ty Menser as well as Commissioner Gary Edwards. We also have interim county manager Robin Campbell as well as assistant county manager Rob Gilder and our budget team here to continue the 2024 through 2025 budget presentations. And so we are starting off with Public Works this morning, and they are here with us all morning, and we will have a little break in between. I'll pass it to Nicole to see if there's anything she needs to add before passing it to Jennifer Walker.
Sure, I'll pass it to Robin Campbell. Thank you, Nicole. I just wanted to mention that we have Public Works in the morning today and CPED, Community Planning and Economic Development, this afternoon. Both of these departments have larger blocks of time because of the extreme scope of the programs and services that they deliver. So we've reserved a little more time to go into their budgets. If they don't need the entire block, we'll get out a little early, but we wanted to ensure that there was enough time to cover all of their programs and for the board to ask questions. So that's why we're spending a little longer with these departments. Go ahead, and I'm gonna pass it off to Jennifer Walker.
Thank you, Robin. Good morning, Jennifer Walker, Public Works Director. And in the boardroom is Assistant Director Karen Weiss. We are, of course, just two people representing a large group of people that helped put this budget together, but appreciate the board's time that they're giving for us to present this today. And Karen is going to run the slideshow for me. Fantastic. So Public Works is made up of 6 divisions with 7 different lines of business. We are a 7-day-a-week operation. We have 207 budgeted positions, 24 funds that we're responsible for administering. Our really sole purpose is providing service to our community, and we're responsible for the county's, majority of the county's owned infrastructure, from our roads and transportation, parks and trails, solid waste facilities, stormwater facilities, water and sewer utilities. So we do have, as Robin mentioned, quite a breadth of work that we're responsible for and programs and services that we provide. The mission of the department is to provide excellent public works services in all areas of our business. And we've established these core values that really just aren't words on a page. They are action oriented. We do ask our staff to use these to help guide them in their decision making, and they are a part of our employee performance evaluation process. It is really important that we are continuously remembering that our jobs exist to serve our community, and we keep that at the forefront at all times. On the right is our the department's strategic goals and objectives, which are community focused. As we look at increasing access to our services, improving our internal operations, sound fiscal management, and because of the type of work that we do, that emphasis on safety is extremely important. We're constantly striving for operational excellence. For the next slides 4 through 9 highlights the funds that the Public Works Department is responsible for administering. So this is going to show the estimated beginning fund balances for 2024 and 25, as well as the proposed revenues and expenditures, and estimated ending fund balances. And we will go through and review some of the 10-year plans once we go through the budget proposals that we've submitted. So just as you go through these, like I said, 4 through 9, just highlight the funds that we're responsible for administering, and we'll go into more detail later on. If I could draw your attention to slide number 10. The we separated out the general fund nexus that Public Works has, and this is for our parks and trails. And so this is the what we again proposed prior to the environment changing, but this showed what our FTEs were for 2022 and 23, and then what we were proposing for 24 and 25, the personnel costs, and then all of the other expenses. And slide 11 shows the summary proposed budget for all of the other funds, excluding parks and trails that are funded through restricted funds. It's just a high level summary. Our personnel costs here are about 18% of our overall budget in 2024 and about 22% in 2025. So as you've heard from some of the other departments and offices that have already presented to you, that staffing is a challenge, that retaining and recruiting staff, we're seeing those struggles. The staff that we are getting in are fabulous, but we've got retirements and people making lifestyle changes and moving closer to family and that type of thing. So it is impacting our department. We're also seeing that it's as a result, we're having to adjust some of our levels of service because we aren't deep in some areas. And so when a person leaves, we're just doing triage in some areas to be able to provide just the base level. We're also seeing the cost of doing business increase with inflation. The cost of just our paint for traffic operations has increased significantly. So you'll see a request for adjustment of our maintenance level budget there in traffic operations. And the county is growing, right? I mean, we have just an increase in the number of people that are using the infrastructure, that are visiting our parks and trails, the volume of water that we're supplying down in Grand Mound has increased, 43% over the last 4 years. We have an increase in the number of people that are visiting our waste and recovery center and drop box locations, and increased municipal waste as well. And then we just have infrastructure that's aging. And so we've got some deferred maintenance backlog that we're needing to address. And then we're acquiring new infrastructure through development. So as that development is occurring in those UGAs, that the improvements that are happening are at the requirements or standards of our local cities. And while they're in the UGA, the responsibility for maintaining those falls to Thurston County until that area is incorporated into the cities. So as we looked at developing this budget, we had all of the requests that we proposed meet one or more of these development goals, which are directly aligned with our core mission to deliver excellent public service to our community. The supporting robust and well-maintained infrastructure systems for a thriving community. I mean, this is improving our asset management practices, which will result in being more proactive and less reactive and helping our decision-making for future infrastructure investments. This increase in community access to our services, so enhancing our credibility with our community and continued public support for our services. The maintaining our assets to provide those essential services for our growing community. So investing in our asset management to maximize the value and reduce capital costs and ensure safety and readiness to provide essential services. So we know that the more deferred maintenance that we have, the more expensive it is to build new versus maintaining existing. Building an infrastructure to meet our growing community. This is where we just prioritize our delivery of capital projects to address the highest need. So safety and our ADA accessibility and growth. Strengthening the culture of safety. So our employees have the expectation that safety is everyone's responsibility. We have staff that are out there. I'll just leave it at that. And then strengthening a sound organizational business practices. So this is, again, just developing, hiring, and retaining quality, stable, diverse, and thriving workforce. So before we get into the specific policy level requests, just an acknowledgement that when this budget was put together, it was based off of the environment at the time, and we recognize that things have changed, and we know that the board is having to make some really difficult decisions. So when these were put together, there wasn't discussions of potential increase in levy shift. So I want to just make sure I acknowledge that we understand that the environment has changed. So we're going to go through these, and we recognize that there's going to be some additional conversations that probably need to be had. But this was put together based off of the needs and the forecast that we had at the time.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Ask a question. Being you bring
Yes.
up the levy shift, at some point, and I guess this would be towards staff on the budget side, what is the legal amount of levy shift that's possible? And does that possibility, that dollar amount, change if we declare an emergency in some fashion or another?
So I can tell you that the amount is not changed by an emergency.
Okay.
And then the limits are set by the amount of the levy rate. So you can transfer, the maximum transfer is, and I need to look the numbers up, and we'll do that during the break.
Okay.
But the maximum transfer is a amount that the general fund levy cannot exceed, and that the road fund levy can't go below. And we are nowhere near those maximums.
So there is some ability
There's-
to offset some of our general fund problems.
Yes, from
Okay,
the
I
road
just
fund.
wondered.
Yes,
Okay,
it is certainly not an ideal way to do it, but yes.
right,
we've
but
got
we're not in an
capacity.
ideal situation, I might point out. And then my follow-up question to that would be, are you going to go back and go over some of these other pages, like, 4 and 5, and as you've kind of jumped forward, are we gonna review that? Because I do have a question about the transportation impact fees, the dollar amounts on two different levels here that I've reviewed.
Yes.
ask
So
that
the plan was that we would go through the policy level requests
And then go back.
and then review. So after each,
Yeah.
like for roads and transportation, and then we'll review those
Okay.
10-year financial plans. Does that work for you, Commissioner?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, very good. So with the exception of our Parks and Trails program, Public Works is funded entirely through restricted funds, so specific revenue for specific purposes. Our activities are significantly tied to the infrastructure needs and essential services delivery of a growing county. They are reflective of the obligation to our ratepayers and deliver services. They are looking at addressing the needs and opportunities to continue to maintain or improve our level of service and make those important investments for the future. So we're constantly looking at being able to focus on right sizing our programs and making those appropriate investments that pay off in the future. We do have just because of the size, we do have a number of policy level requests to go through. I will say that there's kind of some common buckets that the requests will fall into. They're either going to be an increase in the maintenance level budget, because it's just increasing cost of doing business or making those adjustments. You'll see a common theme across several of the lines of business of a request for pre-designed study funding, which is basically just building the pipeline for our capital program, and then addressing inflation and growth, which has corresponding revenue for most of the funds. So with that, we're going to get right into it. The first request is for 2 road operations supervisors and corresponding equipment and vehicles. So we recently had an organizational assessment done for our road operations division, and out of that assessment, there were high, medium, and low recommendations and priorities. And one of the things that they identified was that the span of control for our 2 supervisors was extremely high. So we have 2 right-of-way or 2 road operations supervisors that have 25 to 30 direct reports. Their recommendation is more of a 10 to 1 split. What this will do is also help us rebalance the work so we can have our crew chiefs spend more time in the field with our crews that are out there doing the work and provide that support, and less time that they're spending in the office, because we'll have our supervisors being able to do that. This road operations group, as information, has not had a staff increase. We have a lower staffing level than we did back in 2006, and yet we have more to maintain, and we have an increasing population, which is a higher demand on our staff. Because again, this is the group that also gets called in the evenings when there's been an accident, if a road closure needs to happen or something like that. So the next request is for a traffic operations supervisor. So our traffic operations group has the traffic engineering and operations manager, and then a senior civil engineer. And then we move in over to our crew chief, and then all of our field staff. So this is creating that supervisor position that alleviates our traffic engineer from having to provide that management, that day-to-day management, and creates a supervisor position to be able to do that and plan the work, so that our traffic operations manager, as we're getting more collaboration and coordination with like TRPC and the planning, is able to spend more time doing that. It's also going to be critical to our implementation of our asset management, continuing out the building of that asset management program. There is a lot of liability in traffic operations. And so we need to make sure that every time we're touching a sign, that's documented. We're making note of that. There's certain requirements that we have. So it's good business management practice there. The third request is for an accounting analyst, and this is a part of our final transition for the moving the assistant director position to be doing more assistant director work and less finance work. We have a capital program. So this position would specifically be responsible for our roads and transportation accounting. We have a capital program that we've seen for the whole increase over 200% in recent years. And our budget and financial planning and reporting requirements are certainly growing. We've got, for our federal grant management for our capital projects, about a $10 million budget there, and specific reporting requirements that are required for those federal grants. So this position would be focused on that.
Jennifer, could I hate to keep bugging you, you're doing a great job.
Yes.
Each one of these, you've got in your expenditure amount, you've got two figures in each block you're referring to. Like on this one, it's 108,000 or 111,000, or maybe both. I'm curious what those numbers represent.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. I neglected to mention that. So the first line would be for 2024.
Okay.
And the second line would be for 2025. Okay. So for example, for policy request number 1, the expenditure amount for 2024 is $387,278. And then for 2025 would be $275,988. You may ask why the difference if it's two positions, but it's the equipment.
Sure. I can understand.
That offsets that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Training, number 4, training coordinator. So one of the other items that was identified in the organizational assessment was the need for a training coordinator specifically for our road operations group. I mean, it would be for the whole department, but the focus initially would be for road operations. We have been very successful in internal promotion. So as we've had people retire and as we've had people move on, we're bringing in new folks, but we're promoting the individuals that we've had in place. That is resulting in the need for that additional training for them as they're moving in, and then also as we're bringing new people in, because the type of work that we're doing in road operations is a little bit different than the work that they're doing in the private sector, and they're responsible for for operating hundreds of thousands of dollars pieces of equipment. It is important that we build in that training program, and that's what this position would be doing. The next item is for professional services for our asset management program. So again, we're trying to move from a reactionary to more proactive. There will always be a certain amount of reactionary work, just by nature of the business. But we need to increase our planned work more. That percentage needs to be adjusted. And so this is just a part of those professional services to help with that planning.
I guess I'll try not to interrupt you unless you're taking a
Okay, no. Yeah.
But on all of these where you're talking about 24 and 25, and then your next column over is revenue amount, is that revenue amount, does the request in 24 of, say your number 1 there, of 387,000, is there a matching revenue amount somewhere that's new?
No.
The
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm trying to figure this out. You're asking for something, but we don't have more money? They must have more money.
So the road fund, when we take a look at the financial plan,
Yeah.
we can address the revenue sources and how they're going up or down. Okay, so I would encourage you to let Jennifer get through this list, and then we're gonna look at this financial plan where you'll see the revenue trends. Okay?
Okay, I mean, that's okay, but when we do the revenue trend, we're not gonna have the breakdown, except if we've got it in our memory bank here, as to as how it equates to each one of these requests.
So none of these, you can see in this column right here where the revenue amount is blank.
Yes,
None of these requests are based on new grant revenue or, they may be, there's capacity in fund balance and there's capacity because the, property tax is going up. So they have capacity from other sources, but it's not directly related to a grant or some new external thing that's supporting it.
And are these priority requests reflected in that 10-year plan?
They
So you
are.
can, so
Yes,
you'll see in the 10-year plan how these requests will actually impact the fund balance and the revenues coming in.
right, but my bigger concern, I guess, we don't have a problem here the same as we have a problem in the general fund.
right.
We're gonna need to come up with a solution to the general fund problem. And I don't wanna get the cart in front of the horse here, so to speak, because these numbers may not be applicable to the revenue amount requested if we're going to do a diversion. And now,
That's
we've
right.
done a minor diversion, but are we gonna look at this, to me, as the emergency it is? Cause I see that we're short well over 16%. And so we've only asked for cutbacks of 8% in the general fund. And we're gonna have to figure out how we're gonna handle that other portion that we're short. And Jennifer's doing a good job of explaining the need here, but the reality is somewhere we're short of revenue. And if we're going to be able to, and that'll be a debate between us as commissioners, how are we gonna fill this other fund? And we have to be careful that we do it legally. So what does that mean? And Jennifer brought up the fact that, we're looking at other diversion tactics, if you will, or whatever, to make up differences. So as we go down, each one of these are an interesting issue, but we're gonna have to go over them again once we find out the reality of how much money is left. And that goes back to my questions about the transportation impact fees, where there's, seems to be two different, I don't know, I shouldn't say two different, I mean, it's not different, but how we can get those funds, I don't, manipulated isn't the right term, but we've got to do
Right.
something to cover our general fund shortfalls so we know how many FTEs we're gonna have to eliminate.
Right, I agree. And what you'll see when we look at the financial plan is that Karen has factored in a potential increase in the road levy shift. And you'll see the remaining fund balance if the board takes the action to say yes to all of this and increases the road levy shift by $1 million more than what we're doing today.
I don't see that as an adequate fix, and that's my concern, that
Right,
we're getting ahead of it, so.
we're not getting ahead, we're showing you the balance if the picture looks like this. And your prerogative is to change the picture.
I mean, I see this developing problem that we've got. I don't know if I
Right.
see it more serious than you do, but, I mean, just using, road materials for paving or resurfacing type activities, we're gonna be stuck with paying twice as much today for that same material as we did 2 years ago.
True.
So if we're gonna do that, does that really make sense to, do we need to postpone some of that activity and do a diversion to keep the other forms of government running? So that is a discussion that we as commissioners need to have. You know, where's your
Exactly.
priority?
Right, how do you balance it?
Yeah,
So today, Jennifer and Karen are presenting the needs of the department, just like every other office and department's doing. You get to take a look at the financial plan to see how, what they're presenting would fit. And then during the week of October 22nd or 23rd, we will go through and ask you, do you wanna do this or do you wanna do something different?
well, I mean, and that, that brings me back to our sheet that you wanna must do, should do, or
If you
whatever.
have no must-dos, then leave them blank and we'll
okay.
take that into consideration.
Oh, okay, good enough.
Yeah.
You see where I'm coming from, Commissioner?
Well, yeah, I'm having trouble with, there's 4 pages of things and without seeing the financial plan up front, I don't know if there is any money in the road fund, so, and then I'm afraid that once we go through that, and then I go back, I won't remember the details
That's
of
my,
4 pages
that's
worth
my
of.
concern.
Okay.
right
So
now.
I'm like,
So,
my heart's racing, I'm getting a little nervous that I'm not gonna be able to do what's been asked of me.
So what I would, again, what I would suggest is we're gonna look at these pages that address the roads, and then we'll look at the road fund, and then we'll look at the page that
That's 14,
addresses the
14 of those.
parks, and then we'll look at the park fund. And if you'd like to flip it where we look at the fund first, and then you see the details after, we could certainly.
That makes more sense
the
to me.
order.
It makes more sense to me on the ones where
Okay.
there's so many requests, cause I
Yeah,
can't just
I
keep
mean, it'd be
track.
different if there was 3 requests.
Public
but
Works
we've
is
got a
huge, and that's why we've
whole
allowed
list
them a
of-
lot more time.
Yeah.
Well, especially since the policy level requests are reflected in that 10 years, so
Right.
you'll see pretty much everything in its impact.
I'm not doubting for a minute what Jennifer is laying out here on whether it's the need or the justification or the ability to pay. I think it's all there. If we didn't have to look at stealing money out of one fund, stealing from Peter to pay Paul, or whatever you wanna call it, because we're in a bad situation.
I'd rather not call it stealing, I'd rather call it the shift that's legally allowed.
I know, okay.
But,
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Jennifer's going through this and I'd like to give her everything she needs that she's describing. But since we haven't really discussed the road fund, it's hard for me to know if that's where.
so let's do this. We can certainly pull up the road fund. And I think what I would say is that it's really not saying yes to Jennifer. It's really saying yes to the community and the services that we provide as the board goes through that. So I would also say that I did preface it that when we put this together, it was, the environment has changed. So we're presenting these items, and I'm specifically speaking to roads and transportation. So we're presenting these items based off of what we proposed originally, recognizing that the environment has changed, the board's in a very different situation, the forecasts have changed. And so I understand there's going to be some changes. This was my opportunity to give my pitch for the services, because we know that, deferred maintenance just costs us more in the long run. But I absolutely recognize where the difficult position the board's in right now.
thank you, Jennifer, and I think every office and department is in that same position where the budget request was made prior to seeing the gap in the general fund that the board's facing. So let's shift to the financial plan.
So I need to, Rob, you're already in Zoom. Can you pull up
We
the
need-
packet? Cause this is just the PowerPoint.
Sorry, yeah, we're missing the 10 years that are at the end of this.
I don't.
While she's doing that, I just want to say, comment to Jennifer's comment, you are the leader of the department. We trust you to understand that your I could spend infinite number of hours and never understand whether you truly need 2 road operation supervisors. You are the person to tell us that. we trust you. So when I say Jennifer, I mean you as a representative of the community and the services that you're providing to the community as our subject matter expert on those topics.
Ditto.
So while we find the financial plan, I will share with you that I looked up the rates, that are the limitations for the shift. So according to the Department of Revenue's levy manual, property tax levy manual, the maximum levy rate for the general fund after the road shift can be no more than $2.47.5, so that's 2.475 per thousand. And the
That doesn't
combined,
mean anything to me.
Doesn't mean, it means that there's like,
this is the thing,
I know,
it's
but what's
all
the-
about
Let me
the
in the
rate.
Zoom.
I
I
know,
don't
but
know
what's
what
the
it
dollar
Well,
amount
let me get there.
potential?
Let me just walk through these numbers and I will get you to a, here's how much you could shift. And I can't believe we have a meeting room that doesn't have a whiteboard.
You can wheel one in.
It might be useful
Yeah,
for
really.
this
Mobile.
conversation, yeah, because these numbers are bizarre.
I got the big one.
So, well, thank you, Rob. So the maximum combined levy rate can be no more than $4.05 for both general fund and road fund. To put that into perspective, our current estimated general fund levy rate for 2024 is 0.807 cents, 0.8075. And our road levy rate estimated for 2024 is 0.8499 cents per
But
thousand.
that still
For a
hasn't helped me
combined,
any yet.
hang on, I'm not done. For a combined rate of, current combined rate of 1.6574. Now, the part of the reason that our levy is so far under the maximum is because we have tons, it's the whole impact of the 1% cap. And as the property values go up, the levy rate goes down. So our levy rates are quite low and we have a ton of capacity, but the only way you can access that capacity is on a ballot.
Yep, with voters. Voters get to
right.
that access.
So, I'm gonna put these numbers on the board so you can see them, cause they're confusing.
Robin, and can you move the whiteboard to where I can actually see? Because right now you're speaking and I can see Commissioner Edwards.
Okay.
I can get out of the way. I don't
Thank
add
you, I just
anything
need
to
to-
the equation.
Slide through.
Is that better?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
So again, the maximum levy rate for the general fund is normally $1.80, but after the levy shift, it can be $2.475, and this is per thousand. And for the roads, when you get a combined, is $4.05 combined. 2024 estimate is 0.808, and roads is 0.85. I'm gonna round. And the combined is currently 1.657. So you can see we've got a hell of a lot of capacity, just put bluntly. But we can't access the capacity. So to talk about a shift, in the levy estimate, because we were following the direction of the board to decrease 250,000 a year, we did our initial levy estimate with a $2 million shift. This year, we're shifting 2,250,000. And by the way, that's in addition to the 1.5 million in diversion. This is just the levy shift we're talking about. So the current shift of $2 million pre-shift the levy rate for the general fund would have been 0.774, and post shift is the 0.808. That's this. So the shift in the levy to get $2 million is about 33 cents. No, it's 0.033 cents per thousand. So there is, if you figure that 3 cents in levy shift gets you 2 million, and we're this far from the max, you could actually shift just about this entire road levy and not hit the maximum. So in terms of value, that's why I keep saying you need to determine how much you want to shift, because there's capacity, but you have to take into account through the shift the reduction in services that you're providing for roads. You're not gonna do the whole levy for general fund. You gotta leave something for your roads. So how much, the real question is, how much are you gonna leave in the road fund to do the work that we need to do in the county on the roads in the unincorporated area? And how much do you wanna really shift to the general fund?
I guess, in my initial blush is, at what Jennifer has been presenting to us, I didn't see what the total was, and I didn't add it up in my head as she went along on priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know, down to 14, is that what it is? So that gives me an idea, if we stayed with the philosophy of a maintenance amount, the maintenance amount possibly would not allow for any additions if we took that much out. But I don't think that's what we need to do. But we do need to do something to protect the general fund. And I don't know where that is. So it's somewhere less, so maybe it's 40 cents or something. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but we
Right.
can't figure that out until like whatever Jennifer's total of 14 priorities adds up to, and then we're gonna, somewhere along the line, we're gonna have to
Which
say,
is why we're suggesting we need to take a look at the 10-year financial plan. Because this factors in all of the items that Jennifer's been talking about and adds an extra $1 million to that 2 million shift that's currently planned.
but the $1 million isn't gonna do it, in my estimation, and still lay off 100 FTEs.
So then you can start to say, okay, if you don't fund, see, most of these asks are quite modest. Even though there's a lot of them and they all add up, the vast majority are modest asks. So,
If I may, Robin, the total on slide 26, the total of those policy level requests for 2024 are just under 1.7 million. And in 2025 are just a little over 2.5 million.
right, But it's not
Hey,
like.
let me ask
so-
you a question, okay?
So before, and I will get to you in just a moment, to Jennifer's point though, that total includes $1.35 million for Country Club Road for the Green Cove culvert, which we are into.
Mhm.
That is not something you're not.
I know, we don't have
that's a
we don't have flexibility
must
there.
do, exactly. So, and I'm not quite sure why that's a policy item, but
I mean, we've already
let-
made that decision, I
And just so
thought.
you're aware, I did exclude the operating transfers from the totals on slide 26, just for awareness. So we're not,
Okay,
So
so
we're-
this becomes quite confusing. But
I'm glad you're saying that.
I would say it's complex.
Yeah, there you go.
okay.
it's a lot.
You can call it complicated. It is complicated though.
No,
But
this is complicated.
it's, well, that's beyond complicated. That's the, what the hell was someone thinking?
Yeah, well, how'd they come up with
Yeah,
that
how did they
formula?
come up with that?
Right.
So I would suggest though, that when you look at the things that have been requested here, you are most likely not gonna say no to all of them. There's surely a few things on here that we clearly see are necessary. And you're probably not, when you look at this financial plan, you will quickly see that there's probably not a whole lot more. Maybe you can get another million out of this, but you probably wouldn't want to go that far. So if you were to choose 1 million of these items and do another million in shift, even then, when we're getting into the out years, we're gonna have to figure out projects you won't do that are on our CIP and TIP to keep the fund in the black. So you not only have to balance the general fund, you must also balance the road fund.
Yes. But we're $7 million short in the general fund.
Yes,
So
no, I'm
therein
well
lies the
aware.
problem. And 7 million is more than an 8% cut out of the general fund. That's the bottom
it
line.
is, well, it depends on how you calculate it.
And we're barely staying maintenance level to do that.
I would agree with that.
So anyway,
All right.
Not to confuse things even more in this complex thing, right? There are two components of this. There's the diversion and the shift, which both have the resulting implications to the
Yes.
road fund.
Right.
yes,
So we were talking about shift here, and I just didn't want us to forget about the diversion piece of it as
Right.
well.
The 1.5 million. So really, this year, we were already planning to take 3.5 million out of the road fund and shift and divert it to the general fund. If you were to add not do the reduction this year and add 1 million to that, then we're up to 3.5, 4.5, 4.75. And that pretty much puts us back to where we were before we started to step it down.
Actually, a little bit
A
more,
little
actually.
more,
Mhm.
250,000 more.
Yes, exactly. Who's counting, right?
Yeah.
Back from
but that
2020.
250,000 is the reference to the rainy day fund contribution, is that?
We've been putting $1 million a year into the rainy day fund from windfall revenue in the general fund.
Yeah.
And the rainy day fund is now at $4 million. Part of my proposal when we reviewed the non-departmental budget for the general fund is that we not do a rainy day deposit this year, and you reduce the ongoing money that is in that fund that was earmarked for rainy day on a permanent basis by $400,000. Because we're close to the cap. So while it's raining, we would not put any money into the rainy day fund.
But we might have to draw that down, that's all, that's what I'm thinking. If
the
we're gonna
board
make
may
up that $3
choose
million
to
difference.
change the resolution
know,
to draw it down.
We might, yeah,
Or
but
not.
it is a plan to maintain maintenance level for a while. You know, it doesn't do us any good out in 2027, I don't think, but.
Right.
Anyway, okay,
So-
more to come.
Take a look at the financial plan. Karen, do you wanna just at a very high level?
I'm driving right now.
She's driving.
Okay, sounds good.
Tell me where you want me to go.
So I
And where are we
assume
at? Where's that?
everybody would like to
What-
focus
what-
down at
What
the,
page we
We are now on this
on? Okay,
plan. It's not in the PowerPoint. It
okay,
is one of those.
it's right here,
Believe it is
Top
page-
one,
right here.
37 maybe.
looks like it.
Yep. 1190, roads and
Yes.
transportation.
Okay,
Right.
so
You should have brought your rulers.
as we
I see that, okay.
As we talk
That's my
about
fault.
financial plans, I will just tell you that in terms of public works and our philosophy about developing financial plans, we do take a conservative approach. We try to avoid surprises. We try to avoid bringing surprises to the board, right? In terms of, oh, we haven't planned and we don't know what the future looks like. And we also feel that's very being conservative in our budgeting or planning is appropriate for the type of infrastructure and essential services that we provide. So just keep that in mind, right? We have a lot of variability and potential need for responsiveness. So in like 2022, we had to respond to the flood. That's a good example of how we can incur some costs in a very short period of time. Snow removal, those kinds of things. So that is built into the budget. So what I would say is when you look at our total revenue in the road fund is not really any different than most of your other funds that you're talking about, which is that our revenue is not necessarily keeping pace with inflation and our costs of doing business, especially in light of a growing infrastructure, right? We've got the same 1% property tax limitation for the bulk of our revenue as well that comes in through property tax. Our motor vehicle fuel tax that we receive, just around $5 million, that's really actually been pretty flat and taken some dips in recent years because of the nature of driving, right? People are driving differently, different types of vehicles. So I know that discussion is happening at a much higher level, but all of those things do impact our fund. So it is a true statement to say that our total revenue, again, not keeping specifically track with our total expenditures. If you move down, however, to sort of the below the line revenue and expenditures. So yep, keep going. So here are some of the adjustments or forecasting calculations that we do. So we typically have savings in our Fund 1190 for all of the reasons I just outlined before about our conservative approach and wanting to be able to be responsive. We too have over the last few years had some vacancies, right? Because of recruitment, retention issues. We typically have a savings of about 10% of our total budget, which you can see there, that's the third line from the bottom above ending fund balance. So we try to make this as realistic as possible in our planning. And so that's a 10% estimated savings in each of the years that you see projected out. We have had as high as 13% and as low as 9%. So just to kind of give you an
Okay, let me
idea.
ask you something, because you're talking about percentage. In that general area, you're showing a 6% change for 2023, but a 37% change for 2024. Can you explain that?
It's year over year. Oh, that's a good question here. Let me look at the number and figure out where that came from. 37.
It's change
That's
in the
reflecting
fund
the
balance.
change
It's the
in
fund balance, yeah, sorry, change, yes, the change in fund balance there, sorry. Okay,
Why?
just for that reason, we're looking at in 2023, from 2022, our fund balance was just under 19 million. In 2023, we are forecasting a $20 million ending fund balance, which is a 6.5% increase from 2022. But in 2024, you can see we are currently estimating an ending fund balance of 12.5 million, which is a 37.6% decrease.
But why is that big reduction? Is that the Green Creek Bridge replacement or culvert
So
replacement?
part of the
Give me an
reduction-
example of a big hit.
It's the revenue.
Yeah,
The hit is the revenue. It's not the projects.
Okay.
Because if you look at the spending side, you'll see that their spending, before we make these extra adjustments, their spending is actually coming down, but their revenue is dropping. Prior to talking about additional levy shift, we're already projecting the not general fund, but the road fund levy would only have garnered them approximately a little under $1 million increase. The money from the motor vehicle fuel tax is expected to
Be
go
flat.
down, but yeah, basically flat. The state money that we get from CRAB is completely dependent on projects.
We got a crab board member here.
We do, but if you don't fund the projects, we
Yeah.
won't get the CRAB revenue.
Right.
Miscellaneous revenues are dropping by about $500,000. We're not assuming the REIT transfer for pavement preservation of $1 million next year.
Why is that? Why are you not?
Because they don't have anything built into the CIP for that
We
or
are-
specific projects.
We are not doing, we're doing chip seal in 2024.
seal.
And overlay in 2025, and chip
Chip
seal
seal
is not
doesn't
eligible for
qualify for
refunding.
REIT.
Do a sec-
So you see that the amounts of revenue are really going down to support an equal amount of expenditures. And when we strip out another $1 million, actually $1.3 million, for the levy shift, then that is what's driving this drop in the fund balance.
I have two questions there. So for one, just looking at the revenue drop, it looks like it went from, it's going 34.9 to 31.8. That's $3 million less.
Right.
And that can be accounted for because you don't have the $3.5 million from REIT. So that really isn't. And then how does the $3 million drop in revenue translate into what Commissioner Edwards pointed out is a $8 million, or I guess $7.5 million drop in the fund balance from 20 to 12.5?
Because they also strip out down below, Karen articulated in addition to that 3 million, you've got the drop in the additional 1.3 for the levy shift. And
where's that? Where's
increased
that number?
spending due to comp and class studies. And they don't even factor in the COLA yet. So she shows that down here. See this 1250?
Yes.
That is the extra million in levy shift plus not doing the 250,000 reduction this year. And see, even though we're not bringing in this REIT money to the tune of about $3.5 million, the project line, road infrastructure maintenance repair, doesn't drop by a full 350 on the expenditure side.
And these
And salary
expenditures
costs go up.
are including all of the policy asks?
Correct.
Other jurisdictions, other county jurisdictions must be faced with something similar to this.
Oh, yes, no, we
So-
talked about that at Wasac.
Right. So, hopefully they're gonna be working on solutions to deal with this same problem that we're dealing with.
And each one is different. Not everybody does the diversion and the shift combined. Some do one or the other. They generally go toward the, diversion tied to the,
Law
supporting
enforcement
the road patrol.
Right.
Well, and I would say that Thurston County has the unique distinction of doing all three. Because one of the other policy level requests we have is the agreement that we have, so direct reimbursement with the sheriff's office as well.
Mhm.
Right. And we are one of the highest, if not the highest, county in the state as far as the amount that we shift out of the road fund.
How do
What,
we,
we are not the highest, I will say that.
Yes, well, that's good, because there was a moment in time when we were.
But yes, we are up there for sure.
I think for a while Pierce had more, but,
how are we doing per capita on these same numbers of, okay, when I say per capita, I'm referring to about 150,000 people in the unincorporated area of the county.
roughly half.
So, when we have comparable county jurisdictions, and maybe they've only got 100,000 in the unincorporated, or maybe they've got 200,000, I don't know. But if we stick to that, unincorporated population served, how are we doing in comparison? Does the Association of Counties have those, do they glean those figures? They certainly wouldn't have them yet for
Well,
probably 2023, but is there a history?
Crab might have it, Wasack might have something on this. It's hard to compare though, because the levies are so different.
Well, they all have to go by this crazy thing
They all
here.
do, but before the 1% cap came into play, counties were all over the board on what the levy rates are. So, and we all do something different on the shift and diversion. So it's kind of hard to do a apples to apples comparison, but we can certainly ask Wasack. They have quite a bit of information on levies, so we can ask what they've
I
got.
mean, I'm just wondering, for serving 150,000 people, looking at our FTE population, I don't know, what is it, 1,200 or something, that we're utilizing. Is that a comparable ratio similar to what, I don't know, Mason County's got, or Clickitat or Kittitas? I don't know the answer to those things. I think like in Kitsap, it seems to me there's a higher ratio of service to unincorporated because you don't have the municipalities that we have. Is that correct? Is that your analysis? You got up around 300,000 population, but you've probably got 200,000 in the unincorporated area.
Not quite 200, but there's
close.
probably 160, I think it was like 164 last I knew.
Are you at 300,000 yet?
No,
You're only
not
about
yet.
275 or?
No, closer, it was probably between 285 and 290.
Was it? Okay.
So, however, I mean, if you think about the levy rates, the road levy maximum rate is $2.25, and our estimated levy rate for next year is 85 cents per thousand. So we really have capacity of $1.40, and would you be interested in going to the voters for a levy lift specifically for roads? That's one option. Another option is to fund the transportation benefit district. And you could take, I'm gonna say this, but you're gonna tell me if the law changed. You could take a councilmanic action to generate additional revenue specifically for your road projects. And other jurisdictions have done that, and we have not. So if we're
Ask me
gonna
that
do
question in about,
comparisons.
ask me that in about a month and I'll give you a better answer.
After we see what happens with the ballot measure we've got on there. Yeah, no, I know. So there are options that other counties are doing that we're not. If you
Have-
wanna do it, 'cause this is why I'm saying it.
There's one
apples to
council,
apples
there's one county
comparison
that's
is
done
difficult.
councilmatic. Is there one county that's done councilmatic on that?
I'm gonna defer to.
I didn't think there was any.
We'd
I
have
would
to take a look.
that up. I do not
Yeah,
know.
we'd have to look.
Without looking.
A year or so
Cities.
ago, there was none, I don't.
But we know
cities.
that the cities have.
Yeah, oh yeah, cities have. Yeah, for sure, I know that. Okay, just food for thought for down the road.
All right, so shall we get, it's about 10:11. This might be a good time for a short break. Or here, let's do this. Let's let Jennifer get through the rest of her list of items she's requesting for the road fund, and then we'll take a break.
Let's go ahead and take a break now, Robin, and then because I have to like put myself in that setting because we deviated so much from it,
Okay.
from the policy request that now my brain is on the road fund and the shift and diversion. So
Right.
let's go ahead, take a break now, and then we'll come back and we'll focus solely on Jennifer's policy request. Unless commissioners have any more questions in regards to the road fund right now at this time.
We'll be talking more about road fund after the break.
I think I'm good.
Okay, so for now we're good. Okay.
All right.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and take a break now. Okay, we are back from break and passing it straight back to Jennifer to continue on with her presentation on the policy matters. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, no, we don't want that.
Want this one?
No, we
yeah,
want the
slide-
PowerPoint back.
Yeah.
The
We don't
slide
wanna
deck.
go
You
back
can use
to
it,
this.
just go to slide 15 there for me, or
There you go.
15.
I think aren't we on slide 14?
Yes, but trust me.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's the PowerPoint number versus
Yeah.
the,
Okay, understood.
Let's throw
I never doubt you, Karen. Okay, so we'll start up with number 6. This is basically one of those are we good?
Yep.
Okay. This is basically one of those maintenance level budget adjustments that we have with the significant increase in materials. Number 7 is a request for an automated pavement inspection rating equipment. So we currently do this with an employee and a seasonal assessing the conditions of our roads. This software would be a cost of $225,000 and then an annual $25,000 expense. But we probably have a net increase of like $5,000 because we spend $20,000 with the extra help every year. So it's really only like a $5,000 increase, and also just adds to the consistency of the rating of our roads. It's also, directly tied into the specific reporting requirements that we have to CRAB. And so we're basically looking at trying to make this assessment, inventory condition assessment, less labor intensive. Policy request number 8 is for additional staffing for our field staff as a part of that organizational assessment that we had. The recommended range was up to 69 field staff. We currently have 51 field staff. And again, as I mentioned, those are 2005, actually less than 2005 staffing levels. Moving on, the priority number 9 is for, again, our transportation pre-design study. So I talked a little bit about this earlier. This is basically funding that we have request every year. And we'd like to have it be more programmatic and get put into the maintenance level budget. It's what we use to do alternative analysis to determine what projects will move, what the design of the project will actually be, to then position us to be able to apply for grant funding. Number 10 is really our Good Neighbor program. This is basically where we're defederalizing money for some of our smaller jurisdictions, and we have this through an agreement that we have in place with TRPC. Number 11, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we have an interagency agreement with the sheriff's office, and so this is a slight increase in the costs to adjust for their COLAs and benefits. I think the overall agreement is maybe around 165,000. Karen, does that ballpark, about 165,000 total annually? Request number 12 is the county has an interagency agreement with for maintenance of the Centennial Station and Amtrak. We pay 27% of actual costs. So this is basically just the increase in M&O costs. This is shared with Intercity Transit, the cities of Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, Yelm, and Port of Olympia. So again, our share is 27%. And then the last 2 items are really just housekeeping items, where we're transferring funds from the M&O to capital, basically for cash flow. and similar for the country club road at Green Cove. I think what I would say is that the requests that we put in are really focused on our key planning and programming to move from less reactionary to more proactive, right size, right area. And yeah,
Thank you, Jennifer. Commissioner Menzer has a question, then after that, I have a question as well. Go ahead, Commissioner Menzer.
So on item 10, this rural support program, is there money coming in from another place? Because I thought that was a revenue neutral endeavor. Karen is nodding, so
I'm
I'm
nodding
looking
my
at
head.
her.
Yes, there is money coming in. We had I believe it was $755,000 that was awarded to a capital project in our Fund 3010. And of that, there's a 20% administrative fee that's included in that. And so we got the $755,000, and in that committed to $275,000 in 2025 and $275,000 in 2026.
So we need to say yes to that. That's part of,
And it's, yes, it's a commitment that we have under an existing, and yes, that is revenue. It's kind of, I know it's a little bit wonky here, but it's not necessarily a timing directly 755 in 2025. We get the grant money for a project that we're already working on
So where do we have the grant money booked?
in 3010 as a part of one of our capital projects.
If we've already got it, how come we're asking for it?
So why? Oh, okay, well, there's that. The question is, did this really belong in policy? And then there's the, if you're booking the revenue in a different fund, why would you be booking the expenditures from this fund?
The revenue is in our capital fund because it is supporting a capital project that we have, right? And so for us with our capital improvement program and tying out to the capital project, the capital improvement program with the budget, the revenue needs to be associated with our capital project that's occurring in Fund 3010.
So this item B 34094 is not tied to that revenue.
Correct. Well, again, we get the revenue for a specific capital project, and that revenue is booked associated with that capital project. In turn, we have a commitment to free up some other dollars, freeing up the dollars.
I'm there.
Okay.
That's the defederalizing of
That's the
the.
This
defederalizing.
is the,
And
yes,
and-
it,
yes, and that
Well, I
comes
won't use
through
the
our
phrase
Fund
on screen.
1190. Yes, right, we all
yeah.
have to be careful of those. But, so we are freeing up funds because they gave us that additional
Right.
grant money, freeing up funds that happens to be in Fund 1190.
that are eligible to spend
Eligible.
on these small local projects.
Exactly.
Got it.
And it's
So
a policy-
This is a must do.
And it's a policy level because I don't have it, it's not a maintenance level item, right? We need to increase the
It's-
expenditure
it's-
authority in this
It's
year.
indirectly tied to the revenue. It's
Yes.
not directly supported by the revenue. But it is an agreement with that we have with TRPC. Yeah, I know. Once you started down
Yes,
that
down
path,
that
it's like,
road.
oh yeah, I remember this.
well, in my mind, it's directly tied to the
It,
revenue.
it
so
is.
That's all I was
There's
pointing.
revenue associated with this. You're just not gonna see it in that column on
Got it.
on the
That's what I
slide.
just wanted to point out.
Right.
Yes.
That is a must do.
Thank you. My question's in regards to, we've been hearing a little bit from Jennifer about, and not today, but in the past, in the previous couple of months, about struggle with hiring engineers right now, specifically related to roads and transportation. And I'm wondering, right, with any of these positions, is that kind of in an effort for Public Works to kind of mediate that engineer shortage in the workforce, or is there any kind of balance that's put out?
Are you specifically related to our policy level requests?
Yes. I'm wondering if, the first policy request that you were the first item, which was the road operations supervisor, right? I know that you mentioned that it was a traffic engineer who kind of
is doing that right now, and it would kind of offload some of those duties off into like having a supervisor. And so I'm just wondering if some of these policy requests is to kind of assist and kind of that engineer shortage, or was that not part of your thought process?
But I would say, yes, it's a combination, right? So we are emphasizing maintaining our existing infrastructure. The key group that helps us with that is road operations and prepping for our increased chip seal and increased overlay. So needing the staffing in road operations to allow for that. I would say I feel that the road operations division needs additional attention, and that's what we're trying to do. I feel like it has just had to just kind of plug along by itself for a while. And so we're, after looking at that assessment and seeing how we're organized, we know that if we can maintain and keep up on our regular maintenance, that it will cost us less in the long run. Specifically, to your point, Chair Mejia, is yes, the traffic operations group is a pretty lean group, and the coordination efforts now, as our county is growing and the complexity of the transportation system, requires our traffic engineer to spend more time at that policy level and coordination and less time on that day-to-day activity. And so bringing in a traffic operations supervisor to support that effort is what we are requesting. And I would say that, you know, I know the board is having to make some difficult decisions. If it would be appropriate, I would welcome the opportunity to go back and readjust some of the policy level requests that I have, because there are some in here that I do feel are critical, and that emphasis on our road operations, our supervisors, that training coordinator, that accounting analyst, those are extremely important to move us forward.
Thank you.
And the other ones, you know, they're still a need, but I can come back in 2 years.
Commissioner Menser, and then I'll get you.
So I just want to say, you've got them in priority order, but if you think there's a readjustment to that priority order, please let me know, because I'll tell you right now, I'm inclined to look at the amount of money that we decide we're going to spend and go right down your list. Because I'm not hearing anything this morning that makes me feel like, oh, this one's more important than this one. So if you have that information and you want to communicate it to us through a reprioritization, please do that. Because I'm going to take those priority levels that I have in front of me at face value based on your professional opinion about the most critical needs for your group.
I think we have prioritized them. I think that there are some, as Robin pointed out, maybe that weren't the highest priorities for us, but are must-dos that are a little lower down. So example of that is that rural community support
Yeah,
program.
and I get that.
Our priority 10,
And
but
that would help. And I mean, I know that's tough because it's like you know we're gonna do that. So it's like that's why we typically pull maintenance level out, because that way we can really get your priorities of the not must-dos. And we can just,
I almost think. of
don't
that as
force you to
me.
prioritize things that are,
11 and 12.
There's art and.
I could certainly work
We're
with the budget
short-staffed.
office on how we define policy and maintenance a little bit on that.
Right.
No, I mean, 11 we could cut out. We just reduced the dollar amount. I mean,
can you, I think my mind was spinning on the rural support when you touched it. So I don't even understand 11. Can you explain that to me? I don't think I was paying attention because I was trying to figure out rural support. Yeah, what is
Yes.
the cost of service increase?
so we have an annual agreement with the sheriff's office. So originally, Public Works had a specific deputy within the department that was responsible for handling oversized loads, going out to our job sites to help with traffic control. We know that the presence of a deputy in our job sites just helps diffuse some hostility that can occur. And so it was actually prior to me getting here, the position was pulled into, basically the previous sheriff said that they would not deputize someone that was not under their chain of command. And so we entered into an agreement with the sheriff's office to handle the oversized loads and permitting and regulations for those heavy equipment or those trucks. And so that's what this is. And so every year we have just a certain dollar amount. So we just adjust it up for their cost of living and increased benefits. So that's what that is. And I want to say it's like 164,000. And so we just reimburse them for their efforts.
It's roughly the fully loaded cost of a road deputy.
Is there some advantage, in your opinion, to having that person deputized and under your shop's purview? And what would that advantage be?
Well, I can, I haven't had a specific conversation with the current sheriff, so I think what I would say is that the interactions and the conversations that we have had with the new leadership has been very cooperative, very responsive. I think we have a really good working relationship with the sheriff's office, and this is working for us. We can make this work for us.
So the under the prior structure, we had a guy who had been there forever. And it was when he retired and Sheriff Snaza took office that Sheriff Snaza, not only did he decline to deputize someone that was not in his chain of command, but also if that person were sick or on vacation or whatever else, they weren't available. So Sheriff Snaza said for roughly the amount of a patrol deputy, a fully loaded patrol deputy, he would provide coverage, and it wouldn't just be one single person. That it could be 2 or 3 people that were trained to do this work and made available for better coverage of the roads. So there was a 3-way negotiation between the then Director of Public Works, the Commissioner's Office, and the Sheriff to set up the current structure.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Commissioner Roberts, go ahead, sir.
Going back to, I think it's on number 2, if you don't have that position, do you have a horror story about what could have been done a lot better if you would have had that position? Is there something that brought this to light that, a real glaring example of, well, that didn't work very well, or that project didn't turn out very good, or other than the numbers that, you mentioned, I think 1 in 10 versus 1 in 20 or something like that. Is there something that brought this to the top of the level because something went awry?
I think I'm going to say no. I think that we certainly have a couple of lawsuits that we're working through right now. I don't know if I would say that they're directly related to this. There might be somewhat of a nexus in terms of our ability to be more proactive in the touch points on equipment and that planned work versus reactionary. But at the same time, our traffic group is a really effective group. I think we're just getting to the point, there's like that tipping point where there's just not that capacity any longer. And having our traffic engineer be able to provide the level of oversight that's needed creates significant challenges in our interaction with TRPC and the planning piece of it. There's just so many hours in the day. And so that's what I would say.
Okay, let's move on, because now we have to get to the other funds.
Yeah.
And are we comfortable going, as we move to Parks and Trails, moving to the proposal before we look at any financial plan?
I think we need to look at the financial plan first and then the proposals.
Okay, well, I would say this, with Parks and Trails, that was a silly comment on my part, because there is no specific financial plan, because these are general fund funded.
Okay, there you go.
So,
That's so sad.
but that will,
Well,
we'll take that approach the next time we do this.
Right.
so the first item that's requested is for the funding for the post plan. So one of the requirements is that we have every 5 years, we are required under the GMA to update our post plan. The last time it was done was in 2020. The second item is the conservation futures. So basically, this is just maximizing the conservation futures, the cost for maintenance and operations.
That's
Re-
absolutely maintenance level.
Then we need to work on our definition of policy together, I think is where we come out on that.
Yeah.
So.
And then we're pulling the other two for consideration. Again, recognizing that this budget was prepared prior to our current state. So we're not asking for consideration of the last two. This is the general fund nexus that Public Works has, these two specific ones, the first two.
And two is covered under maintenance level, right?
Yeah, this is just maximizing the amount available from conservation futures. You may recall in conservation futures, the maximum amount for M&O is 25% of the property tax revenue from the prior year. So we do that calculation every year and make that, the board's direction has been to make that amount available for parks. So we just automatically adjust that every year. And it's from conservation futures.
It's about $390,000 that we're able to use.
Yeah.
For the maintenance and operation on certain eligible parks and trails. Not all of them, just certain ones.
So that really takes us back to priority number one, as far as really your only ask, isn't it?
Yeah, and I would just, Jennifer,
General
hopefully I'm not gonna step out here, but I would also say we've pulled the Parks and Grounds maintenance specialist position request in light of the general fund pressure. That does not negate the bigger conversation about what we really need from a staffing standpoint to support our parks and trails, especially as we talk about additional connectivity and adding additional resources. I mean, I think we all understand that we are understaffed, under-resourced in that area. And so, you know, those conversations we're gonna keep having, because we're really not able to, you know, maintain that desired level of service that the community wants, that we really need to be providing, and that is going to need to be addressed as we continue to
How many
talk about it.
FTEs do you have in there?
We have 5 field staff for parks and trails.
And just think of our geographical area.
Yep.
Number of parks, and then compare that to Lacey. And I really don't know what Lacey's is now, but 2 years ago, I think it was 38 FTEs for their park system. And so we're kind of behind the curve on that. But I do have to say, on this 30 and 70,000 on your first priority,
Yes.
I don't get it as a, what are you gonna do? You're gonna hire a contractor to review that plan and update that plan? Growth management, does it have specific issues that you need to address, or can you get the plan out that says 2020 and for 2025, we're struggling and we're going to try to divert more from conservation futures? That's the end of the plan for the adjustment. That doesn't justify the expenditure in my regard. So that's just where I'm at, trying to save every penny in the.
Yeah, unfortunately, as with most things that are tied to the Growth Management Act, it's a mandated plan that we do on a periodic basis that ends up getting incorporated into our comprehensive plan, but it also could limit our ability to actually apply for other funding.
I realize that you have to upgrade the plan, but to what degree? I don't think it's ever been laid out that you have to do X, Y, and Z, or you're not eligible. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on that. I don't disagree with the need, but it's just like maybe some kind of a certification or something, you
So
know.
it could be a review and revise as necessary,
Yes.
really understanding.
It really,
I do know that we were not able to apply for grants during the time period prior to this update that we had. It limited our ability to apply for
and you
state
have to
RCO
upgrade.
grants.
But
Right, for sure.
what does that upgrade entail? Therein lies the recipe, if it's gonna turn out good or bad.
But this, I think this gets back to the staffing, and lack of capacity. We don't have capacity in our park staff to update the study, which is why we'd be reaching out to a consultant for professional services.
I don't know, I mean, to me, this is the wrong time to do anything, even this smaller dollar amount, that's gonna hit us, and it's gonna hit us, cause until we figure out how we're gonna handle, I'm saying we're about 150 FTEs off kilter here on our general.
I think, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think, so even prior to me getting here, it's been an ongoing struggle in terms of a sustainable funding source for our parks and trails. And I think what we're challenged with is that, regional, the Thurston TRPC just came out with their Thurston Regional Trails Plan. And they've got, maintain our existing trail infrastructure, expand trails within Thurston County, enhance the trail-related infrastructure, improve neighborhood access to trails. It's like this disjointed, wanting to, add infrastructure, add improvements, but we don't have the money to maintain it. And so at some point, and I don't know if we're there yet or not, but are we there? Are we getting to the point where maybe there's a discussion that needs to be had about a metropolitan park district?
Oh, I don't disagree with any of what you said. It's just that right now, we're in a bad situation to be adding anything. So I don't disagree with you, the need's there. But the reality is, I think we could meet that time frame commitment by changing a date or something on the front of the plan. I don't know if it'd be that simple, but.
Yeah, I respectfully, it may not be 100,000. We're estimating there, but I would say respectfully, we don't have the staff to do it in-house.
What is the time frame commitment? I mean,
It was last updated in 2020, so it needs to be updated again by 2025.
So by the end of 2025, theoretically.
and, well, anyway, just supporting what Jennifer said, we heard from the Visitor Convention Bureau that their plan is to triple our trail mileage in the next X number of years, so.
Probably would be.
And I'm imagining most of that's in the unincorporated county based on the plans that I'm aware of for.
Maps show
Yeah.
big impact.
Probably a pretty important policy document as we bring on 2 more commissioners and have those discussions about what the Parks and Trails program looks like for the county.
Right.
Right, it sets the, it sets the vision for what we want that to look like, so.
I have to say with Commissioner Edwards that I was part of the plan for the updating the last one, and I read it, and it was really thick and beautifully done and everything, so it's hard, and we haven't, other than people's dreams of what could be, nothing really has changed. So it's hard for me to imagine $100,000 effort of describing the changes from 2020 till now in our park system. We have the same parks, we have the same parkland, we have the same number of employees, we have the same, funding stream. I don't understand, frankly, other than changing the date, it's hard for me to imagine what is gonna change in that plan. It was a great comprehensive plan.
Well, we have increased, there have been some changes. I mean, there haven't been major changes, but there have
Well,
been
we've got
some.
the Yum Tenino thing.
And we've
done.
paved some area down around
And then
Rochester.
there was an area where
Bit
we're
of
gonna be
trail.
expanding, but
Wh-
yeah, no, I see it.
Okay, I'll do it for half that. I'll just dig in my free time.
Now you're getting to my point of view.
All right. So, and there are a few things on the horizon that we've been talking about that directly impact Parks and Trails program. There's the proposal to install EV stations at our trailheads in some of our parks. There's the discussion about the forest lands that we'd want to maintain as a park. Low maintenance, but maintenance required nonetheless. So when we're talking about these additional items that will directly impact the Parks Trail program, those are not things that Public Works are bringing forward, but they're things that they're going to be responsible for.
The
I have-
timing is just the
Yeah,
problem.
Yeah.
I have a question in regards to any of these, besides the conservation features one, but does it fit into any other fund, I guess?
Do these fit into any other fund?
Yeah, like
So
the post plan, can we do that through ARPA? Like, I don't know, like,
We cannot use our park impact fee for planning. We can't use,
Transportation funds for parks
nope,
related
the
items.
no ability to use REIT one for planning. We can't use, these don't fit under ARPA. Will, I can't think of other funds throughout the county.
We have tried to stretch.
2020, I think. and
as
that's
much as
before
we
Commissioner
possibly
Gibbs on the board,
can.
we Exhaustively,
Yes.
the board tried to.
fundamental public health.
Jennifer had a proposal.
Yeah.
For the
public
wellness
health.
of the
We were
community.
scraping
Because it's
Yes,
parks.
it's a
Parks are
wellness
a
of the
wellness thing.
community,
I
yes.
don't disagree with that.
That's
I
what we
can
came up
see
with that
David's eye
500,000.
twitch right
What's the
That
500?
came from the levy shift. The 500,000 was from a road
Yeah,
levy shift.
you increase, the proposal there was to increase the levy shift and use portion of that money to fund the parks.
Cause that's all we could come up with after we were
Yes.
scraping every
We
fund
really scraped.
back in
Yeah.
2019.
Yeah, because the real revenue source to fund parks, and the reason that Lacey and Olympia have robust park programs is that they have,
Park district.
large parks that generate revenue, and they have, park districts.
I thought Lacey's failed.
I'm sorry, what?
Didn't
Did
Lacey-
Lacey's
I
fail?
thought Tumwater's passed, but Lacey's
Tumwater.
failed.
It did, I think they're going in for round 2. I think they're gearing up for round 2.
Like the rack brings in a lot of revenue. They would say not enough,
But they
but
have
it's pretty
revenue
robust.
sources out of their that contribute to their general fund that
Right.
are unbelievable compared to ours.
They're saving,
Right,
not
the other
counting.
thing with the rack is it's in a public facility district to support it. I mean, they have revenue streams that we don't.
I think it's just, I'm not saying it isn't a good idea, but to take a look at it, but this isn't the time to impose good ideas on a budget that's
I
really
have-
sucks.
Uh-oh.
So, as you consider one-time items throughout the county, not just this item, but throughout the county, there's 100,000 in one-time money that is eligible for any government use. It's gotta be a one-time thing. It's not factored into the fund balance in the general fund. And the money is from federal, it's under the umbrella of the American Recovery Plan. But it's this, it's
trying to get the
the
acronym.
state and tribal.
Tribal.
Yeah,
Starts with an L.
it's $100,000 that you have not committed to anything. So we could certainly use that to replace the general fund portion, a chunk of that to do this, if this were the thing that you wanted to spend that on.
I'd rather give the park folks the money to hire maybe extra help in the summer or something like that, because I think they're doing as good as they can possibly do. They need the help. I just don't see that this is a priority to,
One-time money.
I know, one-time money, but even so, you know, you get a lot done with extra help, one-time money for a couple of seasons. And,
It's
then
a one-shot
Julie,
thing.
next time around, you gotta figure it out again.
Okay.
But let's not commit that until we get to the end of this deal.
Exactly, you wanna, that's money in your pocket for some one-time thing. I mean, maybe you wanna use it to, I was kinda holding on to it because I need to fill a 400,000 gap at the, for the voters center, but if the board should choose it, to use it for something else, I'll continue to look at other things.
Next is water and sewer utilities policy level proposals.
I think this will not be painful. How about that? So, in keeping with the request to start with the 10-year plans before we talk about the policy levels, I have in front of you the first, this is the Fund 4600, and it is way back in your 10-year plans. It is probably, well, it's going to be the fourth one from the last, is what I guess, from a sequential number in your packets. This is the combined sewer utility. This is a thing of beauty from my standpoint, because I had fund balances with the Olympic View of like $3,000 at the end of the year, or Tamashan Sewer was about $40,000. So here is the combined sewer utility. Jennifer will talk more about this when she talks about policy levels. The thing I want to leave you most with as we go through these is Grand Mound is definitely growing, right? In terms of just service area, the amount of water and sewer that we are delivering, the increases that we're having in terms of volumes and also customers. So when you see that, that ties into the policy levels that have been built into these 10-year plans that we'll be talking about. But again, nice balance here for the M&O fund, and it has, you can see this line down here, operating transfers to reserves, means we're putting money away for our future infrastructure needs consistently. So, and I can flip through that, you'll see that. Then here's the sewer utility reserve 10-year plan. Again, there's those transfers coming in, and a nice, I mean, I would never say there's ever enough, but a nice balance to be able to do some planning for future infrastructure growth. There's the consolidated water utility. Everything I just said applies to this, as well as the reserve fund.
And these plans all incorporate all these things we're gonna talk about.
They incorporate everything we're gonna talk about, including the rate adjustments under that blended model where we're trying to get to one rate over a 5-year period of time. Okay, all right, so unless there's any specific questions, I will kick it back. It is page 18. Can you type in 18 for me?
Oh, yep.
Okay, Jennifer?
So as Karen mentioned, utility consolidation, all of these requests are really just the implementation, or a majority of them are the implementation, and also as a result of the growth. So the first request we have here, or second, I guess, is a utility operator. So currently we have we have a 5-person team responsible for the 7 utilities. So that's 365 days a year. We have seen a significant growth and development and regulation requirements for testing. I think I mentioned a little bit earlier that over the past 4 years, our gallons of water and sewer treated gallons of water has been 35% increase and sewer treated is 12% increase. We have had an increase of water sold of 43%, and our biosolids and generated and hauled has increased 24%. The revenue generated over the past 5 years has increased $1.1 million. So just in terms of the impact, the net return, we're in the positive. All of our consolidation plans and the figures that were calculated included this utility operator, the costs of this. So that's already been figured in as well. 3 has to do with
Commissioner Mejia.
Go ahead, sorry.
Didn't we plan for this when we did the consolidation and the adjustment on rates to cover everything that you're talking about here?
Yes.
That was the rate model, correct?
Yeah.
But we still
So-
have to have the,
Yeah, but still, we covered this really.
Yes.
A lot of this is maintenance levels.
Yeah, it's kind of like maintenance level now, other than that 1 FTE. But the 1 FTE I can see is needed because of the added
Right.
capacity issues. So,
So going down this list, I'd say
I don't
number
see a problem.
3 is if number 3 has a rate increase in it, then that would be policy. But if the biosolid hauling, that's because of the contract, right?
I thought we already
Electric
did
is
that.
absolutely, well, you've authorized an RFP to go to the contract, that's why I'm saying number 4 is maintenance level, number 5 is maintenance level, number 6 is probably maintenance level.
on a cyclical
Um,
basis.
Yeah, 7 would be policy because you're wanting to do studies.
Number 8 and number 10 probably are also
Yes,
Maintenance.
just aligning.
maintenance.
Yeah, and number 10 is a increase in the rates. A tax
Because of the rates,
increase.
our taxes have increases, yes, and the volume.
And they're scheduled in,
Oh,
right?
oh,
What do you mean?
that's, yeah, no, that's maintenance level.
Yeah.
And then the number 11. What is
11,
charge refund?
11, I'm sorry, Jennifer, did you want?
No, go ahead, Karen. Go ahead.
Number 11 has to do with an agreement that we have with the Chehalis tribe for when Talking Cedars Brewery came on board. We estimated their level of general facilities charges,
Well, you
but
have
we
to pay
hadn't,
this is a one-time.
that they paid in. Yes, this is a one-time.
That's
We
maintenance
agreed to
level.
assess them after 5 years to determine what their actual usage was. We anticipate there will be a $50,000 refund under that agreement as a one-time item, yes.
So I would-
Refund from them to us or from us to
Us.
them?
From us back to them based on the general facilities charges that we collected.
So really, the only policy level items here are number 2, 3, because it has to do with a rate increase, and 7.
And
But
3,
there
we will
aren't-
have a hearing
there aren't.
for a public
It's gotta be
hearing
a
that will
public
be
hearing
set up
for
at the
the
same
increase
time
in
with
the
the
rate.
revenue.
That's part of the revenue, public hearing on December 5th.
So we have identified these in the question, because I've looked at a couple numbers. We've identified them as maintenance level, so when we go over the line by line, we'll be looking at some of these in the maintenance level, not in the policy level.
Right, so.
So, and if I had had an opportunity, I would have reached back out to you and told you we categorize these as maintenance, so they wouldn't be included on here, but I wasn't able to do that.
Fair enough.
I'm not seeing anything here
I
that
would-
warrants our time.
No, I would also add that, all of these items are funded by, rates that these utility, users, if you will, the customers, pay. So maintenance of the utilities is rather crucial and funded fully from the fees that are charged. So let's move on.
Okay, we'll move to stormwater then, and I will plug in the financial plan, although same thing here, I don't think we probably need to spend a lot of time
49.
on this. Yes, so this is Fund 4060 and
4070.
4070, the reserve fund is 4070, so towards the end of your packet, right before the water and sewer utilities, I think. The stormwater fund has a healthy fund balance, in the M&O fund, as well as in the reserve fund, as you can see. We're really focusing on, staffing has been an issue in the last few years, but we, you know, we are, when fully staffed, working on making sure that we are right-sizing our capital program and plans. We have quite a bit of infrastructure, legacy infrastructure that we're taking a look at to make sure that we prioritize those items that need to go into the capital plan, as well as building the new infrastructure that's needed to support the community. So I will be more, there'll be more on that when Jennifer gets to the policy levels, but anything on the financial plan itself?
Can you give me any information on number 4 on Abernathy Street Basin Study?
We'll get to those.
Okay, so,
Wait, before you leave.
yes,
So we'll get to the requests in a moment, but this fund, stormwater utility, has what appears to be a very healthy fund balance. Which means if there are things that the board wanted to do that qualify for this fund, there may be some opportunities.
Like what?
I don't know right
Yeah, I
now,
don't
I'm
know.
just now looking at this.
Okay.
We'd have to think about that, but,
I know in future years, this is probably an area that's gonna be looked at for the, why can't I think of the word?
estuary,
The
the
estuary.
capital
Thank you.
estuary.
And I would also.
Well,
say-
let's also remember that the stormwater fund has some of the balance that it has because we were down 75% staffing in our technical services group for I don't even know if it was a year. It was a significant amount of time. So none of those capital projects or were occurring. We did just lose our senior civil engineer, although I think when I was on vacation, we might have a strong candidate, but it's directly tied to having the resources available.
Absolutely, but we've got the personnel costs fully built out into the future. So the thing that's going through my head is we've talked about water quality programs. I don't know. We'd have to take a look at what the restrictions are. But if we're talking about water quality programs, it's possible that we could do something here.
Public Works presented a few years ago, they wanted the board's authority to explore habitat-related
that.
restoration projects that had a connection to water quality and
Yes.
stormwater, and we gave that green light, and then I asked about it, in the last 6
Hasn't been
months, and it
anywhere.
was like, well, they were,
It's probably gonna
because of
stop.
staffing and this, that, and the other, it just never really got going, so I mean, to me, that's maybe where that money ought to go.
Is there a way that maybe we can pick up the study again? Because it would be good to know, right, that information, and then knowing that if that's a possible route that we can go. Seeing that it was approved, when was it approved?
2019 or 20.
Yeah, it's been a number of years since those staff brought that idea forward. They were doing some innovative thinking.
And is that some, yeah,
Yes, and what I would say is that that's also going to be a part of the board approved funding for our comprehensive stormwater study. And so holistic, it's going to be, instead of piecemeal, it'll include that as well. So that is in progress right now.
Great. So why don't we, with that in mind, go ahead and turn to your proposals for this fund.
Okay, so first item is a construction inspector. When I talked previously about the capital program increasing over 200% for overall for the department over the last few years, when stormwater, a portion of the stormwater group moved over to public works, the capital program moved over, that there were no inspectors for that. So we've just absorbed that. And we've done that through some contracting. That is not ideal for our construction inspection to be done by contracted services, because remember, this is infrastructure that we're taking in that we will be responsible for maintaining. And it's also more expensive to do that as well. So we're requesting a position, construction inspector position, which I think will also help with cross training as well, in terms of even with development review and our other inspectors, because there's a stormwater element, a component of every one of our transportation, or every one of our transportation projects as well. So we're asking for that. This is the second item, again, is the pre-design studies that we've asked for. I talked about that on the other systems as well, again, just to help build in that project pipeline. We're asking for specific funding for our retrofit and restoration studies. So this would be to evaluate our classes of our legacy infrastructure, such as our dry well replacement and stormwater outfall, and prioritize the retrofits to improve our water quality and reduce localized flooding. And the last item, which is specifically what Commissioner Edwards asked about as well, has to do with doing a specific case study at Abernathy. And we're trying to evaluate like root cause of localized flooding issues to help inform our drainage manual policy decisions and enforcement and implementation practices. So
Is there a map of that?
We do not have one with us today. We certainly could provide that.
but we know with on Abernathy Street that we have an increased development activity. And the area is also known for having high groundwater and overwhelmed conveyance facilities, which is why we did the project that we did. So we're trying to use this as to do a case study on it.
What does it mean when it says various at the first item? I'm looking at our cheat sheets.
The funding for various.
It is 40, I just closed the request because I was looking it up. It's, there's four different funds, and it's like the capital and the reserve funds. It looks like it's, pulling in.
So all utility funds.
No general fund.
No general fund, all utility funds.
What's the number of it again?
Number one under the stormwater.
It is, the bulk of that position is funded by stormwater. It does have some other funding, I think, that goes a little bit to the water and sewer utilities. It's for helping our water resources program, but the bulk of that is stormwater.
Stormwater, it's 4060, 4070, which is capital.
Yep.
4650, which is sewer capital, and 4750, which is water capital, and those are the two new funds.
Yes.
Right, no general fund.
No general fund on utilities. Nothing will have a general, well, I guess that's not quite there. We will point out if something has a general fund impact on it, for sure.
I would have written general fund if there had been general fund on this one.
I want to do a time check. We only have 5 minutes left that was scheduled. Are commissioners available to go a little longer this morning?
I can go.
We can keep going?
Yep.
All right, so we'll keep going, but Jennifer, yeah,
I do have some questions.
if,
Okay.
okay, good.
Go ahead.
I see that this is just asking for one FTE, and you see you've got 24 and 25 costs. Is there any chance, and I know these others are kind of one-time study issues, but I'm not sure that one up at Abernathy yet myself, but the pre-design and the retrofit, is there any chance that we couldn't somehow combine that dollar amount and assign that to an FTE person, even though it's one-time expenditure? Why do we have to go out of house to do these?
They're not.
We don't have,
Sorry, I was gonna just say, they're not one time. Those two items would be ongoing maintenance level items that we're asking to have in the budget.
Forever? An ongoing study?
Two and
forever?
three, because they are ongoing to feed our capital program.
Oh, well,
Right.
that's a different,
And they do include, we do allocate staff time to those on a direct expense, right? When they're spending time on those studies, there is staff time that is allocated to those.
Right. But
I'm sorry, Jennifer, I cut you off. Did you?
pre-design in particular is through our A&E contractors, right, usually?
Usually, but there's also
I know,
staff
I
time.
understand
Yes,
there's
but
more,
yes,
but-
that's, the bulk
quite
of that
often.
would be consultant expense, but there is an
Right.
FTE allocation to it.
Right.
it's really our ability to leverage the finite amount of resources that we have. And trying to ask for, I mean, ideally, yes, I think the stormwater utility could grow, even with engineers. I think it needs to grow. I don't think I'm in a position right now that even if the board approved additional engineering positions, that I could recruit for them. We're in a very difficult, it's very difficult right now. So we're trying to leverage the resources that we do have, and that's what we use our consultants to help with that.
I'm not up on what's going on Abernathy, but I know north of town in the area of 26th, there's some serious high water flooding problems there. And south of us, off of 93rd, where that new industrial complex and warehousing stuff went in, and Tumwater, I think, was most of it, but maybe a piece of it was in the county. And that also, that area is periodically a high flood area. And I don't know if you've got a plan trying to come up with a solution there, working with Tumwater, or if there's a plan in place. I know when Tumwater did that one state building, they ended up having to tight line the water out of the basement or something over to the Deschutes River. It was a nightmare. So I'm just wondering, just thinking ahead, if you've got any plans to address either one of those particular areas, north of Olympia and south of Olympia, south of Tumwater, actually. It's right on the border with Tumwater.
Okay.
So,
I don't have an answer for you
long
right
range
now,
plan.
Brooks.
Yeah, we'd have
I'm sorry?
okay.
We'll have to get a response to you.
But to your point, that's what that funding would be used for, right? That's exactly when an area is identified and needs to have a study as to, does something need to be done? What would that potentially look like? That's what that study money funds.
And the fund is healthy, I guess, too.
Yes.
I don't know
This fund is healthy.
I don't know how we would be setting those priorities to make sure we look at those places that, I know we'll be looking at them when we get a high rain situation and high groundwater, because then we always get complaints.
So you
How
would-
come you haven't fixed it?
Once we have proposals, through the studies will result in proposals. Those will come to the board through the CIP, and there's an advisory committee that goes with this, isn't there?
We do
Is
have the
there-
Storm and Surface Water
Yep.
Advisory Committee, yes.
Well, I would also say that the stormwater group is we have a lot of data in terms of where we have our localized flooding and how we're prioritizing those projects that then lead to looking at doing studies in those areas to see what would the actual project be to then populate into the CIP. So I'll take a look at the two specific areas that you're referencing, because if we've gotten calls, if we, any of those touch points that we have, we're documenting those. So we'll follow up on that.
All right. Next.
Okay, we'll move to noxious weeds and lakes. There's only, we'll look at the 10-year plan. There's only one policy level, so that should be also pretty quick. Let's see, 1350 to 39. This will be the third. If you've got them in order, this should be the third financial plan that you have in your packet. So this is the noxious weeds and lakes. This fund is, currently we see pretty stable and healthy. I will say if you look as we go along here, you'll see that as you look out in 2028 and 2029, that fund balance based on current projections is starting to decline. This shouldn't be a surprise. Our last increase in terms of the rate on this was in 2016. So, about 10 years down the line, we'd be looking at evaluating whether or not a rate increase is needed, but there's nothing needed in the short term.
Can you talk a little bit about the indirect costs? It looks like revenue's around 578 and the indirect costs are around 240 of that. So it's
Significant.
40-something% of their fund.
One of the things that the Noxious Weeds Fund have, they're high GIS users. And so that geodata cost, the licenses, and the allocation of those indirect costs is higher in this fund as opposed to some of our other funds. And then, of course, the other items, which are just the,
Why is that?
Equipment.
because of the licensing costs for the licenses that the Noxious Weeds staff use in the performance of their program.
And the mapping of where they're doing treatments, so because it's not just one and done, usually you are treating and you are incorporating that into a maintenance type of program. If I'm correct on that one.
So funds like this, in terms of the proportion of their revenue that would be charged to an indirect cost, it would really vary fund to fund based on what their usage of various products and staffing and services is.
We allocate, it depends on what it is the allocation is, but many things we allocate based on FTEs, right? So everybody's getting the proportionate amount within their FTEs. But if a fund uses certain equipment, right? Our roads funds has lots and lots of equipment charges in their indirect rate because we have such a heavy concentration of equipment that we use there. Noxious Weeds has some equipment, I have a boat. And so again, the GIS costs, which are pretty significant, they are significant. They are a large cost factor for us. They are getting a high allocation of those geodata costs. So yes, it varies depending on, we look at each item and determine who uses what in what level.
Right,
to
and we
allocate
do
on this
that
one.
across the whole county.
Yeah.
That is our practice for allocation across the county.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking of, and I know we're about to go to lake management, but I'm just thinking ahead because I've heard so often the argument that like, we don't use that. Like, that's not something that we take any advantage of, but yet it's built into the rate that they get charged. So I'm just trying to square that with how this is working across different funds and groups. But well, that's a topic for a couple minutes.
So I will flip back to the right slide and Jennifer can talk about our one policy level request here.
Yes, one policy level request. When water resources moved over into public works and we looked at opportunities to streamline, Tim Wilson, who is our water resources division manager, originally held that noxious weed program manager position. And so every time we have a position, he was promoted out of that noxious weed program manager position. Every time we have a position that becomes vacant, we do an evaluation to say, is this position still needed? What's the work that's being done? Is there a way to consolidate? Is there a way to shift? Like how do we make things and can we make things better? And we did that, and we said, we don't think we're going to need this position. And so we eliminated the noxious weed position, and absorbed that into Tim's responsibilities as that division manager. And what we have found over those last 4 years is that the level of responsibility and oversight that that division manager has with respect to our stormwater utility, our water and wastewater utilities, is that he doesn't have the capacity to do that. And we're not providing the appropriate level of service that I think we need to be providing for the noxious weed program. This request for this program manager position has been reviewed and discussed with the Noxious Weed Board. They provide a letter of support. They are in favor of creating this position again to have the oversight of the noxious weeds program. So that management and administration of the program, the developing and recommending of the annual program policies and procedures that get adopted by the Weed Control Board.
Who's first?
How much is that gonna change on 2023 wages and expenses, wages and benefits? 377,000 for 24, 432,000. Where does that fit in there? How many FTEs do you have now?
We have,
I
I
would
say three. Is it 3 or 4? 3.
And what would this person be doing?
This person would establish the overall program that gets adopted by the weed board, by the weed control board,
These three.
and provide oversight and supervision. Right now, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4, but they're all direct reports to the division manager. So just in terms of organizational structure, that's not ideal.
So from 23, you're going up from 377, you're going up to 432. What would you be going up to there if this was approved?
That it is.
That is-
That's it.
It's already
It is
built in.
included.
That's built into it
Yes.
right there?
Yes.
That's as if we approved
It
it?
says
Yes.
if you approved it, and the difference that you're seeing, why it's not directly correlating to the amount of our ask is
Yeah,
because we allocate out salaries. You are going to have less of our water resources managers' time in here. So that's not been allocated in 2024, but you are seeing an allocation of that in 2023. I'm not saying it goes down to 0, but it's just a much lesser amount that would be allocated or charged by the water resources manager here, and then
Who, by the way, gets paid at a higher salary than the program manager that we're proposing.
It's already built in.
it's, yes, all of our policy level requests have been built into the 10-year plans that you're looking at.
So what is the amount of, I mean, Tim does a heck of a lot more than noxious weeds, so what is it, what proportion of his time is he currently spending on noxious weed, and how much do we think he should be spending if he was doing what we need him to do?
I'd have to go look at the allocations back at the office. I'm not gonna be able to tell you what
Well, I
that is,
mean,
unfortunately, right
These
now.
types of situations are always a little tricky, cause it's like, you know, you're just trying to squeeze it into somebody else's work portfolio and it doesn't fit, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a full FTE. And I know it's hard to recruit for somebody that's not a full FTE, but if there's only 2/3 of an FTE of work, it feels irresponsible for us to fund a full FTE if they're
This
not.
is a full FTE position.
You're positive about that?
Yes, yes.
Again, we'd be, I do have the letter of support from the Noxious Weed Control Board, who weighed it with their perspective as to what's needed in that program. So if you guys, are interested in seeing that, we certainly can provide it.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, please.
I will make sure and pass that out at the end.
So as we're transitioning and reorganizing that noxious weed group, this is the last piece that then removes, over time, we've been transitioning out of seasonal staff because it's a relationship building with those property owners that we do find noxious weeds on, and we're moved away from enforcement, more towards education and building those relationships. So it's not a new person every year that's coming to talk to the property owners. It's our same county staff that have those built up relationships with those property owners that we're working in coordination with them for the removal of those noxious weeds.
So Jennifer, there would be less need to hire seasonal employees?
That is correct.
And would there be savings then from that would offset this cost?
Yes.
Yes, it's been ongoing. So I cannot remember the number that we had, but let's say it was 5 or 7 seasonals. And over the years, we've transitioned away. We've cut away at those seasonals with our full-time employees. And like I said, I just can't remember how many we have in noxious weeds, if it's 3 or 4.
Okay, so you don't have a whole lot of seasonal employees left.
We've been transitioning, that is correct. Right.
Okay. Next, are you ready to go to the next thing?
Let me ask one question about that. Something, and are we going to lakes next, by any chance?
Yes.
But I don't know if that'd be in there, but I mean, I'm wondering how that fits if we go with Rob's, if it happens that we go with Rob's proposal on the whole lakes thing. I just remember something about that wild iris business. Weeds is saying they're not doing something and Lakes is stuck with it or vice versa. I really can't remember it. You know anything about that, Rob? Something came up about that.
There was a question that was posed by some of the LMD steering committee members, just in terms of the transition. What would that ongoing relationship be with noxious weeds? And it should not change. Basically, the focus really in many ways is on the terrestrial side or the shoreward side of things. So I believe, it's my understanding anyway.
Had the lakes been paying to get rid of that iris thing or something?
I'd have to go
They
back.
felt that noxious weeds should have been, or was there something in there like that? I just don't have it all locked away.
There has been targeted contributions from the LMD specifically for sort of what I would call an emphasis kind of treatment, but that should still be accessible to them in the future.
I'm good for now.
Okay, so.
And I did confirm we do have 3 employees in the noxious weed group currently.
All right.
So unless you direct me otherwise, I would propose we not look at every lake management district 10-year plan unless there's questions.
I agree. I think that overall, the whole story here is that we're moving lake management districts out of public works. The proposal is to move it to,
Environmental health.
right,
And potentially to then predominantly a contracted service where we would actually have a minimal amount of staff's time dedicated to it, mostly being a point of contact to help facilitate all of the logistical pieces, because the county cannot absolve itself of the receipt of funds and then the ultimate accounting, et cetera.
so I would say that all of these items encapsulate that move.
Exactly. I would say that one other thing is there is a rate request adjustment for Lake Lawrence in here that is at the request of the steering committee. So that's in here, as well as general fund support to cover the indirect costs across all 4 of the
For all 4
for
lakes.
the LMDs. And then the final thing I would say on that is 2 of them are brand new funds, right? 2 new LMDs, Offutt and Pattison. And there is likely, this is probably more for budget office information, but there is likely to be a couple months where we are in negative fund balance in that based on potentially assessments coming in versus spending. So,
Right.
but that's,
But it would be resolved by the end of the year.
yes.
Yep.
And just so the commissioners know as well, on that topic, I'm meeting bi-weekly with members of the 4 steering committees to actually look at that transition plan moving forward.
What is this? You're saying it's 27,000? I thought that's what we had for Lawrence and Pat and, Long and Lawrence. But you're saying that includes
That
Offutt and
that-
Pattison?
That includes them. The caveat I would give is that only indirect rates that have been allocated at this point are ones that Public Works would be incurring on behalf of the LMDs based on a lag time of 2 years. There has still been no allocation from environmental health as to what those indirect costs would be. Also, the 2 new ones, you won't see rates until a couple years down the line.
Oh, well,
So there's
that's
a couple different
part of the answer.
couple different, I guess we should also, sorry, Jennifer, hopefully I'm not stepping over here, but the last item on here was the
Oh,
board
yes.
request item, which was to match with general fund dollars, the assessment revenue.
This was off your,
For the lake-
your brainstorm
So,
list.
We did not
so
prioritize it.
We don't
Funds very
have money
helpful.
right now. Yeah, it was an interesting idea, but you can't afford it.
That's what it would look like. Okay. Jennifer, anything at all else you wanna, nope, okay, fantastic. So, solid waste proposals, looking at the 10-year plan.
More.
I was gonna go to the 10-year plan.
Oh, right.
Is that what we want to start?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
So this is fund, it's Fund 4030. I would like you actually to be thinking about these funds in a trio. Fund 4030, which is the Maintenance and Operations Fund. Fund 4040, which is the Post-Closure Reserve Fund that we have a requirement under the Post-Closure Reserve to maintain that through 2030, but that's likely to continue beyond that. We will always be taking care of our post-closure landfill. And then Fund 4050, which is the capital program. So what may come as a bit of surprise when you look at Fund 4030, because we have been talking about solid waste fund having a healthy fund balance for a while. Well, that was because we were doing a fantastic job of putting away money for future infrastructure needs for our growing community. We have shifted money from Fund 4030 to put away into our Fund 4050 based on planned projects that we are still in the process of exploring. A good example of that is the South County Transfer Station, right? We have not made a decision on that, but we have that line item programmed in our capital improvement program. We've got waste and recovery center reconfiguration item. So what you see is in Fund 4050, we've got capital programs programmed in that some of them will not be moving forward. And so we will continue to have planning and discussions about what those look like over time and as we have more analysis and information. But the thing I want you to kind of keep in mind here is when you take the 3 funds together, when you're looking out in 2027, for example, we have a healthy fund balance combined of about $8 million. So while there may not be a significant amount sitting in Fund 4030, when you look at them all combined, we are in a healthy balance position. Now, having said that, we will note that our revenues and our expenditures in Fund 4030 are out of alignment, so to speak. Our revenues are not keeping pace with our expenditures, I guess, there. And that is something we have been talking about and evaluating through a rate study, which we're going to be doing in 2024. We have not had any sort of rate analysis since 2012. Our rates that we've had in effect have been there since 2012. And so through that rate study, that will inform what those rates may look like going forward, making sure we're planning for that future infrastructure. We are right now subsidizing organics to a large degree, and that will be one of the policy decisions that will come before the board through that rate study. So
What do you mean by subsidizing organics?
the cost that we pay to process those on a per ton basis is a lot higher than the amount that we're charging to take in those organics at the waste recovery center.
Is that the same issue? I remember receiving a letter from the new contractor. Something to do with that.
I don't,
They were complaining that
I think that was a collection and question of sort of where the organics were
Where
going.
the organics were going.
Right.
That's a
And
different
I don't,
discussion.
I'm not sure of that. There's a letter that we received. I've got a copy of it. I thought it was a dumb letter myself, but it was from the new contractor projecting almost what I had said. We better hurry up and sign this contract. It's too good to be true. And then they realized it, I think, is what happened. You
I-
don't recall that letter?
I think they were probably in the same place that many of us around the table have
See
been
it?
in, which increased the costs that were unexpectedly more than what they anticipated. Right?
Yes, this is it. It's 5/18. You don't, on May 18th. You don't remember that, Jennifer?
Oh, no, I remember it.
Oh,
Yes.
So,
you got my attention.
so I'll
Is-
go,
Yes, I think it was there. I think it's exactly what Karen mentioned. It was their planning and forecasting and funding strategy, and maybe that environment shifting a little bit for them. And those are their costs. And then there's the county's cost for processing, and then what we are charging our customers. And that's what we're talking about in terms of the subsidy, what is costing us to pay for the organics is greater than what we are charging our customers.
Okay, is that because of the transportation costs, that something about going up to Snohomish County, or?
I think
No,
it's,
I also think we haven't had a rate study. We haven't had a rate adjustment in 11 years now.
Oh, no, that makes sense, but this particular item here, it seems like it matches with what that letter is referring to. And I'm wondering if we aren't being strong-armed, I don't know that, I don't know if that's the right term, into making some rate adjustments to cover that.
no, we're not. We haven't deviated at all from our contractual obligation that established the rates that we agreed to in that contract negotiation. So they're,
Nor are we even saying that there's going to be a rate increase. What we're saying, it's good business practice to do a rate study, and then that information will be presented to the board, and the board can determine if they want to make those changes. Because the board may choose to continue to subsidize
Well,
the organics because that encourages the support of that program.
But if we had a adequate rate increase, if we haven't had one since 12, I mean, that's kind of dumb that we haven't had one since 12, in my estimation.
we had planned one earlier, but in light of the new contract and wanting to see what those prices were and what that looked like, we thought that it was smarter to do that rate study after the new contract was in place. Again, our contract right now is limited to a 2.5% to 3% increase annually. So, I mean, from the contractual side of things, I think that we are, that's a good contract for the county.
Oh,
But
I think so too.
But,
Yeah.
contracting, while a large part of our program, is not our entire program, and so not all costs are maintaining that same, increase over time. So, and again, volumes have gone up, the number of customers, the tonnage that we're receiving, all of those are factors that we will be considering as we do that rate study and look at that.
Hey, Robin, in terms of a time check, it's 11:54. I do still have a few slides to go through. Is this something that I could we
Yeah,
we
we can
could
get
come
back.
back on Friday, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we can get back to you, Commissioner. On the last few slides, we don't have any time available now. Well, we might with the clerk. We don't currently have time available tomorrow.
Yeah, we still have time from 11 to 11:45, even with the clerk.
11,
11 to 11:45 on Friday is free.
because the clerk's not coming.
No, the clerk is
There was a-
scheduled from 10 to 10:45.
Oh, we do have an opening tomorrow, so we could wrap up Public Works tomorrow.
It's up to the commissioners if they're free.
I mean,
There's not that much left. It really is dependent on your
do we wanna
calendars.
have a working lunch tomorrow? Are commissioners available? To just
I-
get through whatever else we
Do
need?
what we gotta do.
Shouldn't be
What's in the afternoon tomorrow?
tomorrow afternoon, public health and
Social
treatment sales
services
tax.
and treatment sales tax.
God, those can't be taking too long if we've had a pretty good briefing on that.
Well, you saw all the items that David's asking
I
for,
know.
so, and then the treatment sales tax is generally.
But treatment sales tax, you know, is gonna be down too.
That's exactly why they're going to take up all the time
Yeah,
that we've
okay.
allowed for them. But
I
they
feel
got
like
moved.
even with CPET this afternoon, there's gonna be a lot of discussion
Oh,
and
I think
so
so.
that's why I'm just,
Yeah.
if commissioners are available, if, you know, I just kind of want to make sure that we offer that.
Well,
I,
why don't we order a pizza and just keep going right now?
today. Are you available right now? Because it doesn't look like there's a lot left.
I mean, yeah, I'm available. I would like to take 10 minutes or something, because my brain's kind of hurting at this point.
I,
have
yeah, I don't disagree.
If
Just,
we're gonna keep going,
yeah, okay, well, I have to
mean-
reschedule one thing. So let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break so I can
We'll get a
reschedule.
Couple of street tacos.
And then we can continue on.
Right. And let's focus on what really needs to, yeah.
Okay, we are back from break and we are continuing with Public Works. And Nicole, I will pass it to you.
Yes, so we're finishing up with Public Works. There are a number of slides still to finish. We're gonna look at the solid waste utility fund, but at the end of the presentation here, there's also some requests to go through the capital projects. We've seen that in the CIP presentations a number of times, and they've been reviewed at other boards, and so we're going to not look at that section today in the essence of time and just focus on the remainder of the policy level request, if that's okay with the board.
You've seen the capital request many times.
And then in October 23rd, in a couple weeks, if you'd like to look at them again, you'll see them in line items when we go through them.
Right. So if that's okay, then we're gonna move it right on to Jennifer.
Yes.
Okay, so solid waste, the first policy level request there has to do with basically just the adjustment of the maintenance level budget and the cost of doing business increase. So our contract, as Karen mentioned earlier, our new contract provides for an annual increase of 2.5% to 3%. That's what this is covering. 3% in 2024, and then a 5% increase in 2025. This is also a result of an increase in volumes of customers and the waste that we received at the Waste and Recovery Center and Dropbox locations. So we've had a 16% increase in our customers and 10% increase in the solid waste and organics volume.
This is not policy.
This is, the expenditures attached to the contract are a maintenance level item. As would be the growth in customers. My question about this, Jennifer, is if you're seeing a growth in the number of customers, why don't we see revenue increase?
Yes, that's an excellent question and one that Nicole asked as well. And I think I'm going to kick it over to Karen to do a brief response on that.
We did revenue adjustments in an ongoing maintenance policy level, right, or not policy level, in our maintenance level request. We also have changed our revenue projections incrementally, like as a midterm budget adjustment as well, showing some of that increase in revenue. We did not change our maintenance level for our contractual services in that same mid-term budget adjustment. So that's.
So they're in the maintenance level.
They're in the maintenance
Good
level.
enough. So maintenance level. Number one's a maintenance level. Number two is a maintenance level. We're gonna skip that.
Number three, oh.
Go ahead, number three.
Number three is requests for education and outreach specialists, a 2 and a 1. This is in direct support of our solid waste management plan that was adopted by, approved by Ecology and adopted by the board and the other local jurisdictions. The position, the right-of-way 2, or excuse me, Education Outreach Specialist 2 position will focus on our youth programs, education on our youth programs that aren't currently being addressed or actively engaged. So as in terms of some numbers, we have 6,288 students in 4th and 5th grades across 47 schools in Thurston County. This position would be focusing on those key stakeholders, that key group. The Education Outreach 1 position would provide implementation support across all of the solid waste education and outreach programs. So our residential, multifamily, commercial, compost and organics, our youth, and then also litter. This would, with these 2 positions, would result in a staff of 5 to implement the education and diversion programs to reach our population of about 300,000 in Thurston County. Request number 4 is additional funding to support those educational materials. So it's just a small increase there. The
Maintenance level, right,
Maintenance.
Jennifer?
Yeah, number
It's
5.
maintenance level.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me, sorry. Number 5 is our community litter program. So this position will be partially funded by Department of Ecology grant, so it'll offset some of those direct costs. But we've seen, what, 128% increase in tonnage in 4 years. So our litter is increasing. The state has a huge litter program that they've just kicked off, and there was an article in the paper just recently that Thurston County was actually above the average, which is where we don't want to be in this case in terms of the volume of litter on our roads. And so we're really focusing on adding another position to support starting up a more robust program for adopt a road litter,
Is it,
adopt a road and park program
Jennifer, is that
implementation.
on county roads only? Or county-wide?
County roads. It's
County
our area of
roads.
responsibility, but yes,
Roads only.
Yes.
yes.
And it's up how much?
128% increase in tonnage in the last 4 years. So as what we've been picking up on our roadways.
It's unbelievable.
How much is that? I mean, I don't know, that just doesn't sound right, but how many tons are you talking about? 4 or 400?
It's in this.
We actually received, as a part of our reaccreditation with APWA, where we're reviewing all of our practices, this program was actually one of our model practices that we received from the accreditation because of the data-driven approach that we have. So we're talking about 295,000 pounds a year.
From 65 tons to 148.
148 tons, I see that, yeah.
Okay.
How about, is this also dumping activities where roofing and such gets dumped on vacant properties or Fort Lewis or right-of-ways possibly?
This has to do with county right-of-ways.
Well, it might even be on county right-of-ways.
Are you seeing a lot of construction waste in the county's right-of-way? Rights of way?
No.
No, all right. Okay.
Now I may get yeah. Okay, so number 7. Again, this is what we've talked about before, pre-design studies. The last 2 are really housekeeping items.
Any other questions about solid waste?
What's the total ask?
Summary sheet.
Yes.
Slide 26.
Solid waste is 1.2 in 24 and 2.3 in 25.
1.2 and 24? And how much in 25?
2.3,
Again, a lot of this is maintenance level.
yes.
So, I'm sorry, you guys were fast at the end. Starting at the end, stormwater overtime adjustment. Where's the decimal supposed to be there? Cause it's
Oh, yeah,
not 3 million, is it?
it's gonna,
But it would be, I mean, that's how many numbers you
it's
have.
gonna be 300,000.
Okay, and
This is,
so we're spending 300,000 more on overtime than we have.
can you go up a
In the
slide,
past.
Karen?
Yes. We don't have overtime. Are you talking about the operating
Oh, it's
transfer
operating transfer.
adjustment?
So it is
Oh,
$3
it
million.
just says OT. Okay,
Operating.
Sorry, this is operating, our operating transfer adjustment. This is
Yeah,
where we
not
move money.
overtime.
I don't need to
Yeah.
worry about that.
No overtime.
No, it's yeah.
And
me.
pre-design studies, $100,000. I know Jennifer keeps touching on it, but I guess is there any?
Again, would feed our capital program, right? We would do those pre-design studies and analysis of what sort of infrastructure improvements or needs that we would then identify as being capital improvement
And that comes
program
out of
items.
solid waste M&O fund or?
The pre-design studies would come out of Fund 4050, which is the capital program. We do our
Which is what?
studies over in the capital program because we're in the capital program project.
Right.
4050 solid waste reserve?
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, money's collected in the solid waste M&O fund and then it's transferred into the two reserve funds to be available for projects. So when Karen said, look at these three funds as a bundle, together, all of the three funds pay for all of the activities in solid waste.
Correct.
Okay. And I mean, there's projects that have to be done and there's pre-design. I mean, is there any argument to be made that this is not something we should be doing?
Absolutely not. And one example of a solid waste project is the changes or improvements that we want to make in our satellite facilities. All of those need pre-design studies. Anything different that we want to do that's capital project
You mean
requires
like down at
pre-design.
Rochester and.
Yep.
Rainier?
Yep.
Or if there's some other South County solution.
Or, I mean, and it's ongoing because we don't know what's gonna crop up that needs to be done.
Sometimes those come from, we're spending a lot on maintenance. And we take a look at that and say, okay, do we need to be doing something different?
Right,
Which would then do the study to then determine what is that project.
right. Traffic flow might get a study to see if there's a better way to do it and if there's a construction component to that. All of those things require pre-studies.
Okay, last slide for the day. And no specific 10-year plan that goes along with these because these are cross-divisional requests, meaning that they are allocated out, they're all FTE positions, they're allocated out to a variety of funds.
And as we've talked about, our 10-year financial plans include all of the policy level requests that we're proposing. So the first request is a new classification series that we have worked very closely with HR in developing. We've also worked with Sherry in the IT department because these positions are critical to that implementation of our asset management program. So we are required to prepare annual road log and pavement rating reporting. And we have money associated that we get from CRAB as a part of that reporting. So this is really effectively utilizing our ViewWorks asset management software. The specific positions would be responsible for the utilizing that software, the field-based data collection, so that asset inventory, the attributes that go along with that, the condition assessment. And we work really closely with geodata in IT. One of the benefits that Sherry and I have had conversation about that she's looking forward to on this is that having these classifications will free up hours in her geodata group that they won't need to be doing this work. And so we're working with geodata in terms of what's IT, what's the department. So the administration and that security piece still lies with IT, but these positions are going to be handling on the department and the system management side. So it's also going to free up our time that our crew chiefs are spending in ViewWorks. And we'll have specific people that can handle that. So they have more time out in the field with staff. Very, very critical to the advancement of our program. The second position.
Jennifer, can I
Yes.
interject for a second? So
Yes.
this one is marked as various funds. And in 24, 46,600 is general fund. And in 25, 48,000 is general fund.
Correct. These would be supporting our Parks and Trails asset management program.
In what capacity would they be supporting?
So we would we need to put our inventory of what we have in the parks and trails into the ViewWorks software system, so we know where it is, how often we're maintaining it, when are we being called out to do graffiti or, you know, mowing and planning of that work. The people, the asset management positions would be working with those parks and trails crews to capture that data, you put it into the software system, pull analytics and information, help with the planning of that work, so we are more strategic about how we do our work.
You'd said something about revenue comes in for that. What is the revenue?
So Jennifer talked about County Road Administration Board revenue. That was an example of how our asset management program and implementation is tied to the revenue that we receive, in that case for the road fund, for two different funding programs. Without those types of asset management programs and reporting, and in this case, the interrelationship of our ViewWorks software with the County Road Administration Board software, we would not be eligible for the CAP and RAP funding that we receive. So it's an example of how critical that asset management is to us.
Do we have our printout of ending fund balance of all the funds that we get monthly? Is that out yet?
The cash balance.
Yeah, cash balance,
Cash
yeah.
balances. I think it was sent out last week or early this week.
Did that come in?
I can find it.
You usually send it to each one of us, don't you?
Yes,
Did
Melissa.
it
Financial
get sent?
Services sent it out.
Didn't see it.
Melissa from Financial Services sent it out. I can check to see when she sent it out. I think she sent it out early this week.
I haven't seen
I'm
it.
pretty sure it was on Monday, but I can search in my email and re-forward it to everybody.
Yes.
Robin, if you don't have it.
I'm
Yeah,
looking
Robin
for
said
it
she
now.
hasn't seen it.
I may have it, I just haven't gotten to that particular email yet.
Ah, okay,
But
I understand.
On this one, you're talking about 25% is general fund and 75% is from elsewhere, right?
The vast majority of this are from our different funds, depending on
Yeah,
the
but
position.
25% is from general fund?
10% of our total ask in 2025, the $481,000 number, 10% of that number would be allocated or dedicated to parks and trails.
So how much is it in general fund? What's the total amount in general fund?
$48,000
So
in
48.
2025.
Okay. And then does that,
So that would come out of parks and trails.
This is number one. So,
Okay,
so,
go ahead, I'm listening.
I'm sorry,
No, go ahead, I'm listening.
just trying to,
No,
so we're still talking about item number one, right?
yeah.
Yes.
And we're hearing that 48,000 of that request is general fund.
Correct.
Yes.
Well, then it doesn't come out of anywhere else. It would come out of the general fund is what they're asking for. And what I'm suggesting is that we take a second look at that request and see if there's a way to restructure it.
I would say that from Public Works perspective, the positions are critical to us. These are allocations based on how we would anticipate using those positions. But if it is a hard no because of that general fund allocation, we would be looking at reallocating that time to one of the other funds and moving those forward.
And are those the positions that are necessary to advance this?
Correct.
And you're not doing any work around this right now?
We have an asset manager that is still, we are very much in, for most of our programs, the building out, figuring out what we have and where it is. So these people, these positions would be responsible for helping us gather that data and starting to move that along that continuum that you're referring to.
I think what I heard you say is that the general fund portion is related to parks.
Specifically to related in parks and trails, right? We have a need for this across to all of our divisions. But if that general fund allocation would keep us from moving forward with,
We would redeploy those.
we would redeploy it so we can at least move forward with some of our other critical areas, and we'd
But
have to
parks
figure.
wouldn't necessarily benefit from.
Right, we would exclude parks.
Well, just cut it down to 4% of, and then,
They can't
Have
do a
them do a little
random
bit.
percent, based on level of
Time,
effort,
I
but,
think it's
so there
somebody's
would be no
interpretation.
effort toward parks. Basically is how we get the general fund out of this.
Which means all the paved trails, the restrooms and all of that infrastructure.
It wouldn't be part of this study.
Right.
It's not as if, so that could be covered in what's needed under the park plan. There are other ways to get to what do we need at the parks. Wouldn't have to be part of this.
that
At
makes
this
more
time.
sense. I mean, I'm not against, I wanna fund the parks, but
Well, and I
got a-
think that
we've
this
got a problem.
program is extremely important so that, just like with facilities, that we get a strong grasp on what do we need to maintain our facilities into the future. And that's what this is all about.
Correct.
So when you ask what it costs to maintain, you know,
A mile of trail.
mile of trail at the, you know, the bathrooms at the parks, right? That is what an asset management program does for us and enables us to answer those kinds of questions.
Ongoing impacts to projects, infrastructure that's put into the county.
So if we add X number of miles of trail and you ask us what the ongoing maintenance and operations costs are, that's what that program build out and application provides.
Right. All right,
Okay.
next.
Second request is for a pavement preservation program manager. It's really a senior civil engineer. But this position would be responsible for the planning and executing of our pavement preservation program, which would include the trails preservation program. Certainly our current efforts, we don't feel are sufficient, and that this ineffectiveness and not having a targeted effort, I think just leads to more costly improvements and investments in the long term. So this position would also be responsible for managing and supervising the, if the board approves, the construction inspector position that we requested, and will reallocate, reorganize, shift a little bit in that work unit for the increased capital program that we've had.
how are we handling that now?
We have it's a cross between our construction manager and an associate civil engineer. And our construction manager has a significant responsibility. I talked about our capital program increasing 200%. And so Steve's responsible for all of that on the construction side of it. And so it is, again, this is an effort to be more proactive and less reactive.
Do you have an example of where, because you didn't have this, there was a failure or some problem developed?
We've had to make some adjustments on some projects that are overlay projects where we did not do cross sections, and the way that we mapped out and then designed out the edges, additional material was added there that was not planned for, and increased the cost of that project. That if the adequate staffing would have been available to do the proper design work on that, would not have occurred. And that it's just trying to do so much with few people. We're just asking them to do, we're asking them to do more. And I think this is a way from a larger perspective to address our trying to recover on our managing our existing pavement so that we're not spending more in the long run.
If I asked you about specifics on McCorkle Road, would you know those specifics? Utility dug a ditch right down the middle of the road and repaved it, and then the county came by and repaved that whole lane. Would any of that make sense to you? I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm just
No,
saying.
well, you know, I'm operating on caffeine and cough syrup, but
So
I think
I'm gonna interject. So rather than talk about a specific project, and you absolutely need answers, but rather than make that part of this particular meeting, since we're at 12:41, I would suggest that Jennifer get back to you to discuss that particular item.
Okay, but, and I agree with you, except from my perspective, if that's an example of something we missed or didn't coordinate right, I'm just trying to tie it in with the position, that's all.
Right,
Okay.
right, the need for the position.
We can keep going. What is
the next,
Hopefully roads,
There's no general.
no
fund.
general fund.
There is a little bit to parks and trails, but the capital program, because of the trail, preservation program work, which we've began funding in the prior biennium. But mostly roads.
I don't know, when we're having deliberations on this, it'd be good to have that kind of general fund breakdown, because I think that's what
We
we're,
absolutely have that
We
for
have
it
you when we
down by
look at the
line.
line items.
because I think that's what we're gonna be looking at super closely, is that general fund impact.
Right.
We do have, you don't have to look at it right now, but we do have an exhibit with our staffing requests, and on it, we specifically talk about the positions that have a general fund impact. So for future,
This one?
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Jennifer, are you ready for?
I was gonna say, I'm trying to keep track, so just take me in. Are we ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
Okay. So the third request is for procurement and contract specialist 1. So Public Works certainly has a significant and increasing workload that's being managed by our 1 procurement and contract specialist 2. We have just the numbers. Our contracts executed in 2022 were up 14% over 2021. Our on-call contract options were up 20% in 2022, an additional 20% in 2023. For RFP and RFQ actions in 2023, we've exceeded the total number in both in the years 2021 and 2022. As you know, with Public Works contracts and increased grant funding projects and compliance requirements, you know, the support of another person for that, for those management of our contracts and procurement is needed. We have all of our eggs in one basket now, and so this is the succession planning, and then also just that increase in workload that we're requesting a procurement contract specialist 1 position.
And public works contracting is pretty specialized. I'm using small p, small w. And so so we do a lot of this, but we also are assisting other departments when they have a project that falls into that category with that specialized knowledge, because it's a little tricky. Right.
Our last request is for an administrative assistant 1 for records management. So we are seeing a significant increase in our public records requests. And I know I watched Mary Hall's presentation, and she talked about the auditor's office increase as well. In 2022, Public Works received 179 public records requests. So we're asking for an administrative assistant 1 to help with the response of that. As we know, the risk and liability associated with those public records requests are significant. And with that, that is the end of my presentation of the 2024-2025 budget proposal. Thank you very much for your consideration and questions. And
That didn't sound very sincere.
oh, it was meant to be. I'm sorry.
The cough syrup's wearing off.
I'm sorry.
Blood sugar.
Okay, all right. Any additional questions for Jennifer?
So we didn't mean to cut this short,
fine.
because we do want to answer all the questions and give you any information you need to be able to make the decisions, but so if you think of other things you need to know, get those questions to Nicole, and we'll make sure we have answers during deliberation week.
And then if we could just do a quick kind of recap of action items. From my recollection, we are going to go back and sharpen our pencil and just reevaluate on the roads and transportation request. We're just going to look at that prioritization again one more time. And if there's anything to make modifications to, we'll send that to the board through the budget office. There were also 3 items that Commissioner Edwards asked for additional clarification on. One is the McCorkle Road paving, and 2 others had to do with stormwater and localized flooding areas, I believe. Was there anything else?
We'll go through the notes
Okay,
from the meeting, Jennifer, and if there's anything else, we'll make sure to reach out to you.
okay,
And
okay.
on that McCorkle Road, I don't know if anything was done wrong or if it's
I
timed
don't know,
out right or
but,
not.
but we're gonna
Yeah.
look into it and get you any answers.
Yeah. My sense, I keep thinking it's a development review, a developer thing, but before I say that, let me get the
maybe so.
specifics. So sincerely, thank you very much.
Okay, very
Okay.
good. Get better.
All right. Thank you.
Jennifer, yeah. Okay, 12:48, we'll go ahead and take a break, and then we'll be picking up at 1:30 for community planning and economic development. CPED.